You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
It's a long story, but one you've never heard before. This story is about a place that dwells on the mountain, a place where bad things happen. And you may think you know about the bad things, you may decide you have it all figured out, but you don't. Because the truth is worse than monsters or men. At first I was upset when they told me we were moving to some little town out in the Ozarks. I remember staring at my dinner plate while I listened to my sister throw a temper tantrum unbefitting of a 14-year-old honors student. She cried, she pleaded, and then she cursed at my parents. She threw a bowl at my dad and told him it was all his fault. Mom told Whitney to calm down, but she stormed off, slamming every door in the house on the way to her room. I was 9, so it didn't take me too long to warm to the idea of a change. It was like an adventure. New house. New school. New friends. Whitney, of course, felt the opposite. Moving to a new school at her age is hard, moving away from her new boyfriend, however, was even harder. While the rest of us packed up our things and said our goodbyes, Whitney sulked and cried and threatened to run away from home. But a month later, when we pulled up to our new house in Drisking, Missouri, she was sitting right next to me texting viciously on her phone. Do you play?" I asked. Kyle glanced at his mom, who had just been handed her third mimosa. "Yeah. Sure." And that afternoon, with the ease and simplicity of our age, Kyle and I became best friends. We spent the cool summer mornings outside exploring the Ozarks and the hot afternoons in my living room playing the PS2. He introduced me to the only other kid in the neighborhood our age, a skinny, quiet girl named Kimber Destaro. She was shy but friendly and always up for anything. Kimber kept up with us so well that she quickly became the third wheel on our tricycle. On the last Saturday before school started, Kyle and Kimber told me they were going to take me somewhere special, somewhere we hadn't been yet, the Triple Tree. It's a totally awesome, totally huge treehouse out in the woods. Kyle said excitedly. "Nah, we would not have," Kyle shook his head. "There's a ceremony for first-timers and everything." My face fell. Now I knew they were making fun of me. "That's a lie. You guys are lying to me." "No, we're not," Kimber insisted. "What? Why do you need a knife? Is it a blood ceremony?" I whispered. "Yup, it takes like 1 minute." Kyle agreed. "I don't care if you're going to see an Exorcist movie marathon, you're taking your brother with you." "I need a break, Kyle, can't you understand that? And I'm sure your friends won't mind." She flashed Kimber and me a challenging look. "Right?" "No, not at all," Kimber said, and I nodded in agreement. I'd met the youngest Landy several times before and found that he was as unlike his older brother in looks as in disposition. Where Kyle was a wild, excitable fireball with hair to match, I found Parker to be an anxious, fidgety boy with small eyes and dark brown hair. We got on our bikes and made our way to a lesser-known hiking trail a few miles away. I'd asked before where the trail led when we'd ridden across it several weeks before, and Kyle had given me the underwhelming answer of, "Nowhere interesting." Kimber laughed. "No, dummy, it's because of the Prescotts. You know, the family that lives in the mansion up on Fairmont. Mr. Prescott and his son Jimmy own like half the businesses in town. More than half, Kyle agreed. Which ones? Does he own the GameStop? The only store in Drisking I really cared about. I don't know about that one. Kyle wound a lock around the 4 bikes and clicked the bar into place, then spun the numbers on the dial. But like the hardware store, the pharmacy, Glitton's on 2nd and the newspaper. Did they start this town? I asked. You can't go home, Kyle rolled his eyes. Mom said I had to bring you. Now come on, it's only like a 2-mile walk. I want to take my bike. Parker answered. Too bad, we're going off trail. I don't want to go. I'll stay with the bikes. I'm not. Alright fine, he can hold your hand if he wants. But he's coming. Kyle turned and started up the trail. Parker's face fell into an undignified frown, but when the charming Kimber stuck her hand out and wiggled her fingers at him, he took it. Kyle was right, it wasn't a long walk, only a half-mile down the trail and then another half-mile hike on a well-tread path up the mountain. It was a steep climb though, and by the time we got to the treehouse, I was winded. What do you think? Kyle asked, excitedly. I'm going up first. Yelled Parker, but Kimber caught his arm. That'd be fine with me, Kyle grumbled. I opened up the knife, walked around the tree looking for an empty spot. There were so many names on the tree that I had to crunch down and look near the bottom since I couldn't reach any higher. I spotted both Kyle and Kimber's carvings on the tree and I finally found a spot I liked near the ladder. I bit my tongue and carved Sam W. into a blank piece of bark underneath someone named Paul S. Parker went next but had so much trouble with the knife that Kyle had to do it for him. Alright, let's go, I ran over to the rope ladder. Oh yeah. Okay, what are they? That's creepy. I said. What does it mean? I went room to room, 4 in total, and found nothing of real interest until the last one. An old mattress lay in the corner and piles of musty, ripped clothing scattered the floor. What does it mean? I asked. It's just older kids being dicks, Kyle said. Come on, I'll show you the best part of the treehouse. We walked back into the first room and Parker looked up at us and smiled, pointing down to what he'd clumsily carved into the wooden floor. Kimber sat down on the floor next to Parker and I sat on his other side. Kyle took the knife from his brother and then walked across the room and wedged the blade between 2 planks of the wooded wall. He pushed and the board gave, opening up a small, secret compartment in the wall. Kyle took something out and pushed the plank back in until it was flush with the others. Check it out. He turned around and proudly held up 2 cans of Miller Lite beer. Whoa! I said. You, warm beer. That's gross. How did you even know it was there? Kimber asked. Are we gonna drink it? I asked. Come on, Kimmy. I don't want any. I'll tell Mom. Parker said quickly as the beer passed in front of him to me. I put on my best poker face and took a long, deep swallow of the warm beer before I had the chance to smell it. It was a poor decision and when I retched, the foul yellow liquid went all over my shirt. We spent the next hour and a half drinking the 2 cans of Miller Lite and after a while the taste grew more tolerable. I couldn't tell if I was becoming a man or actually getting drunk. I hoped it was the former. When the last drop of the last beer was consumed we spent 20 minutes trying to determine if we were drunk. Kyle assured us that he was wasted while Kimber wasn't sure. I didn't think I was, but I failed all of our drunk tests. Kimber was in the middle of reciting the alphabet backwards when a loud, metallic grinding suddenly pierced the calm mountain air like a gunshot. Kimber stopped talking and we spent a few minutes staring at each other, waiting for the noise to end. Parker curled into Kimber and put his hands over his ears. After what seemed like 10 whole minutes, the sound ended as suddenly as it had begun. "What was that?" I asked, and Parker mumbled something into Kimber's sweatshirt. "Do you guys know?" I tried again. "Well, it's nothing," Kyle answered finally. "We hear it sometimes in town, it's not a big deal. It's just louder up here." "But what's making that sound?" "Baraska," Kimber whispered without taking her eyes off her feet. "Who's that?" I asked. "Not who, where," Kyle answered. "It's a place." "Another town?" "No, it's just a place in the woods." "Yeah, don't ever try to find it, dude," Kyle said behind me. "Or bad things will happen to you, too." "But like, what bad things?" I turned around. Kyle shrugged and Kimber stood up and walked over to the rope ladder. We climbed down the ladder one by one and then started the walk back to the trailhead in an unfamiliar silence. I was dying of curiosity about Baraska but couldn't decide if and what to ask about it. "Baraska." Kyle laughed. "Only babies believe that." School started 2 days later and I'd completely forgotten about Baraska. When my dad pulled up to the curb to drop me off that morning, he locked the doors before I could get out. "And you will, but give me a hug first. In a few years you'll be driving yourself to school, let me be your dad while I still can." "I know, Dad. Why can't I take the bus like Whitney?" "Dad, just don't." I threw open the door of his cruiser before he could say anything more and ran as he laughed behind me. "I know, sorry." "Whose class are you in?" Kimber asked. She was wearing a red sweater and leggings with frogs on them. Her curly orange hair was brushed into ringlets and her lips were pink and shiny. She'd never looked prettier, and I was surprised to realize I'd never really seen Kimber as a girl. "Lucky," Kyle scoffed. "I'm in Mrs. Tverdy's. Only 2 4th-grade teachers and I get the crappy one." "On the weekends?" "Fuck." Kimber giggled. "I'm giving a presentation to the 5th and 6th grades about safety when walking to and from school." "Yeah, he gives it every year," Kyle muttered. I walked into class and saw that Kimber had saved me a spot next to her at the back. Mr. Diamond, a short, round man of 40 or so, nodded at me when I came in. "Mr. Walker, I presume?" Yeah, that's me," I mumbled as I rushed past him to the desk next to Kimber. The class echoed a reluctant and subdued, "Go Grizzlies." "Are you friends with Kimber Destaro?" a tall, dark-haired girl asked me. "Are you related to her?" "No." "You don't have to be friends with her, you know," said the second girl with the oddly round face. A third girl behind the other two snorted. She had pretty auburn hair and a rude, upturned nose. "Well, if you do, you're going to be in the ugly kid group," the first girl warned. "And once you're in that group you can't leave it ever." "We'll see," she said, and the 3 returned to their corner of the room. I sat back down next to Kimber feeling like a badass. It was the first time I'd ever used a swear word in front of anybody other than Kyle. "They said you're too pretty to be near them and that you make them look gross, so we have to stay away from them." "Liar," Kimber answered, but I could tell she was smiling. We met Kyle in the cafeteria at lunch and he had nothing but bad things to say about his morning. Mrs. Tverdy was old and mean and she made everyone come up and say something about themselves even though the class only had 14 kids and they all knew each other. When the bell rang for recess I went to throw my lunch away with Kyle and I bumped into a kid I hadn't seen before. "Hey, are you Sam Walker?" the kid asked. "Shut up, Kyle," the kid grumbled. As funny as it was, I couldn't help but be a little surprised. Not that I'd been paying attention, but I'd only seen Whitney out of her room once over the summer. I dunno. Probably at his job. His job where? It didn't make any sense to me, but I shrugged it off. I did remember my mom giving Whitney some menial tasks like getting the car washed and setting up some utilities to get her out of the house. Maybe she met him once and they started dating over text. Teenagers were weird. The rest of the school week followed much like the first. We were well into the first month when I heard someone mention the skinned men again. We were out on the playground and Kyle and I were trying to start a fire with 2 large wood chips. I'd just given myself a splinter when the distant sound of metal grinding on metal flooded over the playground, silencing every one of us. "Baraska," I said in awe. "Yep," said Phil Saunders. "The skinned men kill again." "No, you saw them, so you tell them." "I didn't see them, Paige saw them." "Oh," Phil said, and an uncomfortable silence descended. "After she saw the skinned men," Phil added. The sounds from the mountain abruptly ended and the subdued atmosphere of the playground disappeared with it. When the bell rang, Kyle lined up in his class line, and since Phil was in my class I made sure I was behind him. The teachers began to count us off. "Hey, what else do you know about Baraska?" I whispered to him. "Bad things," he said, and then shushed me when I asked him what that meant. "Hey Dad, do you hear that? That like machine-sounding noise?" "Yep. I hear it in town every now and then." "I have no idea. Baraska? Where'd you hear that?" I shrugged. "Kids at my school." "Well, it's nothing to worry about, Sammy, probably just some logging equipment." "No, I have not heard that before." Dad pulled his boots off and shrugged off his coat, looking toward the kitchen. I could tell I was losing him. "Skinned men. Good God, Sam. Is your sister telling you these stories?" "No, Dad, Whitney doesn't even talk to me." I repeated. Whitney shot me a betrayed look. "Ugh, seriously? As if I'd waste my time." "No, Dad, I told you I heard it at school," I said. "Real mature, Whitney." I yelled up at her, but she was already gone. "I'll tell Dad about your boyfriend." Christmas came and went with surprising smoothness at our house. Whitney and I got everything we'd had on our lists, which was a first for us. The town may be smaller, but Dad's paychecks were clearly better. "Yeah, and if Kyle's your boss, you know you messed up," I added. Kyle and I high-fived and turned to Kimber, but she wasn't sharing in our victory, she was trying to hide the tears on her face. "Don't sweat those girls, Kimber, nobody likes them. People are just nice to them because they're related to the Prescotts." Kyle tried to give her an awkward pat on the back, but Kimber turned away from him and ran in the opposite direction. "I hate those girls. Like I really hate them," I said. "There's an assembly this morning. No class until after lunch." "Not usually, but we better get there quick so we can get seats at the back," Kyle said as we started walking. "What? Jimmy Prescott and not his dad? That's so weird." Kimber whispered. I don't like Jimmy Prescott, Kimber shook her head. He gives me the heebie-jeebies. His dad is so much nicer, he's like a grandpa. The presentation was slow and boring. Mr. Dowding and Ms. Scanlon talked about the first settlers here, the Cherokee and the Trail of Tears. They talked about Alexander Driscoll's discovery of a motherlode of ore in the mountains and settling here with his family to mine and refine the iron. Then James Prescott took the stage from there to tell the story of his family's early journey to the town and their role in the revitalization of Driscoll itself in the late 50s. Very good question, young man. What did you say your name was? That would have been the end of it if it weren't for stubborn families like mine who refused to leave. We refused to give up the town, and after many, many years of hard work, Driscoll became the picturesque little haven in the Ozarks that it is today. I hope that answers your question. I sat back down and Kyle shook his head at me. Bro. The assembly suffered through another 15 minutes of awkward Q&A until Mrs. Tverdy finally cut us loose. We were released into the cafeteria to wait for the lunch lines to open. Kyle, Kimber, and I sat in our usual corner. That was so boring, Kyle whined. When are they going to figure out that no one cares about Driscoll's history? Seriously, I fell asleep like 3 times. Yeah, but all our minds were blown up. You can't go in them anymore. Kyle said. Kimber nodded. Some kids died after going into the mines, so the city set off some controlled blasts to implode the caverns, at least that's what my mom said. They messed up, though, and I heard they blew up the water table or poisoned it or something. Kimber shrugged. I heard my dad talking about it. Did they use C4 or something? I guess. So we all drink the water, so we all have C4 in our bodies and we could explode at any minute. Kyle said excitedly. Do you think that's what happened to all the missing people? I asked him. Just sitting there one day and boom. Yeah, dude, Kyle grabbed my shoulders. And that's where the skinned men come from. We drove home in strained silence. I was too afraid to ask what was wrong. Mom parked the car a block from our house, which was blocked in by several police cars. When an explanation didn't come, I broke the silence myself. Is it Dad? I asked quietly, holding back tears. Then what happened? Oh, no Mom, I think she ditched. I said quickly. I saw her leave this morning and it was really early, like 6, and she was with her friends. Pete Whittiger and that kid Taylor. Well, my brain struggled to come up with an explanation. Maybe she's ditching. But she has a new boyfriend here. We found all her books on the floor of her room this morning and half her clothes gone along with some cash of your dad's. Right now we think that she hitched a ride to St. Louis and that she's with Jay. The sheriff's office is trying to contact the boy's parents now. We walked up the steps and into a house filled with stale coffee and quiet murmurs. I tried to remember if Whitney herself had ever actually confirmed she was dating Pete, but I drew a blank. When we walked into the kitchen, I saw my father sitting at the table, staring at phone records, head in hand. He looked up when I came into the room and gave me a weak smile. Everything and anything you might know, son. No matter how trivial you think it is. I nodded and sat down at the table with my dad as my mom handed the big man a cup of coffee. Here you go, Sheriff, she said, weakly. Please, Mrs. Walker, call me Killian. What do you know, Sam? My dad asked as he rested his chin on his hands in a mock symbol of prayer, as though I may deliver him from his suffering. Well, I heard Whitney had a boyfriend, that guy Pete Whittiger that she's been hanging out with, and I saw them and Taylor Dranger leave this morning before me." "What time did they leave?" asked the sheriff. "No, son, there's nothing more you can do here. You've been a good brother, now let us handle this." "Dad." I looked over at my dad with begging eyes. "Did she go to the treehouse?" I sat staring at the computer screen for almost a minute. Kimber's words from last fall echoed in my brain. I didn't buy that Whitney had gone to Circle K that morning, and I especially didn't believe that she'd hitchhiked out of town. Nothing they were saying downstairs made any sense if you knew my sister, but maybe this did. Maybe she and her boyfriend went to the treehouse to make out or something, and maybe he'd left her there. Maybe she'd gotten lost, or maybe the skinned men had found her. That was the worst thought of all. "I'm so sorry, Sam." And then I heard Kimber quietly say my name from where she stood at the triple tree. I ran over and tried to follow her eyes to confirm what I already knew was there. And then I found it, freshly carved near the top. My breath froze in my chest and my vision blurred with unwelcome tears. And as the sun took its last desperate breath before plunging into the deep of the horizon, a deafening metallic whirl sang out from the wilderness and spilled down the mountainside.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I am writing this post anonymously because if anyone found out that I wrote this, my academic reputation would be ruined forever. As bizarre and frankly disturbing as what I'm about to tell you is, I assure you it's all true. I am an academic historian and researcher of the Byzantine Empire. I have published dozens of influential papers in academic journals, and I have a permanent teaching position at a major state university in the United States. My main area of research is on the influence of classical mythology on Byzantine hagiography in the 6th through 9th century CE. After sorting through stack after stack of medieval manuscripts, I came across a manuscript that caught my attention. It wasn't like any of the others. For one thing, it was clearly one of the oldest manuscripts in the collection. Many of the manuscripts in the collection dated to the 14th century or later, but this one was definitely from the early 9th century. That wasn't all that was unique about it, though. It was also the thickest book in the collection by far. I opened it up and found a strange text written in Byzantine Greek. The very first line on the very first page read as follows, in my own translation. As I continued reading, though, I began to feel more and more puzzled. The book just kept describing more and more events. It moved on from the 9th century to the 10th century, and from there to the 11th, then the 12th, then the 13th. Strangely, though, the book did not seem like a 13th century work. It very much seemed like it had been written in the early 9th century. Finally, after describing the events of the latter half of the 20th century, including the founding of the United Nations, the founding of the European Union, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the origins of the Internet, the text came to the 21st century. I was expecting it to end there, but it just kept going. It described the attacks of September 11, 2001 in great detail, even though the attacks had only happened a matter of a few weeks before and most of the details were, at that time, not publicly known. Then I read something that made my blood turn cold and every hair on my body stand on end. The document read, once again, in my own translation. This book of prophecies will be discovered in the library of a monastery at Mount Athos in the first month of the year 7510 since the creation of the cosmos according to the Romans, the year which they in that year shall know as 2001. It will be discovered by a scholar named / my full name / who will be greatly astonished at the accuracy of these predictions. He will steal this book and take it back to the land they will call America, where it shall reside for a generation. I was shocked when I read this. I was certain that the manuscript had to be some kind of joke. I looked around to see if anyone was going to jump out and laugh at me, but there was no one there. It was just me, sitting alone in the monastery library. The first month of the Byzantine calendar is September. That means the author of that manuscript somehow knew not only the exact year when I would come find the book, but the exact month as well. The manuscript was right about me stealing it too, although that may have been a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent. I stole the manuscript from the monastery and smuggled it across the Atlantic back to the United States. I kept the manuscript a complete secret and didn't tell any of my colleagues about it. The only reason why I am telling you about the manuscript now is because, for the past 18 years, I have been keeping careful track of all the prophecies in the manuscript. Every single prophecy that was supposed to come true in the past 18 years has. The manuscript predicted the War on Terror, the Great Recession, the rise of right-wing nationalist populism, the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States, Brexit, and even the recent fires in the Amazon rainforest. If it was a major event, the manuscript predicted it. I now know that the prophecies in that book are, somehow, completely genuine. None of the manuscript's past predictions scare me, though. What truly scares me is what the manuscript says is going to happen next. I desperately hope that what that manuscript says is going to happen doesn't happen, but everything it has ever predicted has come true, so I see no reason why what it says is coming won't come. It seems that the imminent tribulations are inevitable. We like to think that the world is getting better, that the horrors of the present are merely transitory, but I fear that what is yet to come is far, far worse than anything we have seen already. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, I've heard a million different predictions about how the end of the world is going to happen soon and how it's going to be so awful and then it never happens. The problem is, the manuscript doesn't say that the end of the world is coming soon. In fact, it says just the opposite. The end of the world won't come for a very long time, but it would be a mercy compared to all the hardships we have left to endure.
Whew, that one gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I found a disturbing diary in Japan's suicide forest, by Mammoth Formal 1. I'm a professional trail guide, living and working in Japan. I moved out here from my native Australia several years ago for work. My job is pretty damn cool but can be a tad creepy from time to time. One forest I work in is a hot spot for suicides. Sometimes the Japanese authorities hire me to help them find bodies of people that have wandered too far from the path. I believed none of the tall tales that locals make up about it until yesterday, when I found a strange, tiny diary in a plastic bag washed up along a stream. The contents are extremely disturbing and are making me question my ongoing employment. Aokigahara, or the Seas of Trees, is a forest in Japan that rests at the base of Mount Fuji. It is a Japanese national park that brings in thousands of tourists every year. It's also known as the suicide forest because people have been ending their lives there for hundreds of years. Not everyone who comes here is a tourist, though. Many of those who come to this place seek a permanent solution to their temporary problems, including myself. My life had just been too overwhelming. To cope with the death of my parents, I was working 80-hour weeks. This was partially to avoid the fact that my wife was banging another guy in our bed. The long hours served as the only way to remedy the crushing debt that buried me and prevented me from escaping my desperate home life. There really was no way out for me. I had no friends, nowhere to go. I could either be at home listening to my wife get pounded or I could deal with the purgatory of paperwork at my job. Unfortunately, it was a simple choice. One morning I woke up after a night of sleeping in my cold garage and decided that I had had enough. I was going to do the world a favor and off myself. However, I was afraid. I have always been a coward. After extensive research of the easiest way to die was inconclusive, I decided that the only thing I could control was the venue in which died. I had always wanted to visit Japan, and deep down inside I hoped that the long journey would give me time to change my mind. Once I arrived in the country, the first order of business was to buy a sturdy bit of rope whilst I was still in the city. Now all I had to do was to locate a solid tree. This wouldn't be hard, considering the venue I had chosen for my demise. I spent the bus ride planning exactly how I would spend the last few hours of life that I still had, and ultimately I decided that I would make it fast. I would follow the trail for approximately a mile and then leave the trail for another mile. This left me little time to change my mind and meant that they would most likely never find my corpse. After being dropped off, I saw how vast the forest truly was. It was around noon, local time, but the shadows cast by the forest seemed to block out all light from around it. There was also an engulfing feeling of emptiness creeping from the depths of the woods. But as I made my way into the forest, I saw dozens of signs that all had variations of the same message. Think about your family, or, get help, death isn't the answer. More of the signs I mentioned earlier lined the trail. They bore messages that said never to leave the trail. Locals here know that the only people who leave the trail are those who wish to die. As a result, tourists stick to the well-mapped paths. I continued to follow the trail. As I pressed on deeper into the woods, sadness overwhelmed me. It was as if I was standing in a black hole where no light could reach me. I knew that it was time to leave the trail. To my surprise, immediately upon leaving the trail, I heard soft, melodic whispers. I turned back and took one last look at the trail for just a moment before pressing on. The soothing voices beckoned me deeper into the forest. Continuing through the sea of trees, the feelings of sadness and emptiness dissipated. I was no longer chilly, instead, the cool breeze felt great. The leaves crunched under my boots, I could hear the sounds of water flowing in a small creek and the sweet whispers continued to draw me in. Finally, I stepped down. I fought with all of my strength against the rope tied around my neck. As I thrashed and twisted violently, I saw a pale, thin woman with black hair in a white kimono sauntering towards me. My vision faded in and out, and I knew that I was dying. Each time this happened, she got closer, until finally, she placed her icy hands around my neck as she let out a haunting wail. I pulled at the noose and desperately tried to alleviate pressure on my neck, but it was no use. The ghostly woman grabbed me and was pulling me downwards, creating even more force on my throat. The force of the impact caused the corpse to plummet from the tree and crash into the ground. As this happened, I made my way to my feet to run in the opposite direction but found myself pulled to the ground by a cold, dead hand. I kept running for hours, the entire time I heard him screaming and running right behind me. I came to Aokigahara to die, but now I wasn't going to allow that to happen. I knew that I would make it away from that horrific place. Finally, after hours of running, the footsteps behind me died out and I saw a light. There appeared to be a woman holding a candle walking through the forest. I desperately wanted to run to her, but I knew that she had to be one of the ghosts I had encountered earlier. I continued to move through the forest at breakneck speed, hoping that I could just make it to the mountain and work my way around its edge until I found civilization, but that never happened.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
The Same Hitchhiker Was Waiting at Every Stop for the Last 100 Miles, by Tobias Wade. There's an easy solution if you want to find out who someone really is. Take a long-ass road trip with them. If you're still together by the end, then it was meant to be. My girlfriend, I'll call her Emily, not her real name, somehow thought it was a good idea to drive 1,000 miles together across the country after we've only been dating for 2 months. We're both pretty busy with work and don't get to spend much time together, so naturally being locked up in a prison cell on wheels for 2 days was going to be an improvement. Hey look, there's another one. How do you think he got here so fast, she wondered. My car blew past him and I stayed the course. We started arguing again, and even when we agreed to drop it the argument just slithered into new topics. She hated my music, I hated how judgmental she was. I was controlling, she was picking fights over nothing. It kept getting worse until we saw something that shut both of us up real fast. We drove for the next 50 miles in silence. I turned the radio back on, but she snapped it back off immediately. It wasn't until I pulled off for gas when we saw him again. "He's dead," she said, standing up. "Can I call this into the police, or is that too much of an inconvenience for you too?" I nodded, absolutely numb. I filled up on gas while she waited with the body until the police arrived. They asked us a few questions, but neither Emily nor I felt comfortable explaining that this wasn't the first time we'd seen him. They took our information and let us get back on the road after about 15 minutes. The car was silent for a long time after that. It was starting to get dark and I kept suggesting places to spend the night, but Emily just shrugged and stared out the window. At the rate we were going, we'd be breaking up by the end of the trip and I wanted it to be over as soon as possible. I just kept driving, long after the sun went down. Emily fell asleep around midnight, but I kept going. She was so beautiful like that, and everything was going so well before this. It was just so frustrating that such a random event that neither of us could predict would destroy us like this. By around 2 a.m. I was getting real tired, but I decided not to give up. Maybe if she woke up and we were already there then she'd see how hard I worked for her. Maybe then we'd still have a chance to patch things up. I caressed her hand, and she returned the pressure. I flirted with the thought that everything was going to be okay, at least until she woke up and started screaming. There wasn't any safe shoulder to get off the highway, so I had no choice but to keep going. She shut up quick enough, but it was still about 10 seconds of hysterical breathing before she could explain what was going on. I glanced back. Then back at the road. Then back again. The hitchhiker was in the back seat. Naked, filthy, covered with black blood and old wounds. His elbows rested on his knees as he leaned toward us, evidently still alive as he cocked his head to regard me curiously. "I can't. Get him out." I slowed down gradually and put my flashers on to warn the car behind me. The hitchhiker reached around behind Emily and grabbed her by the throat. I slammed my fist into his arm and felt something give way under the soft, rotting skin. When I lifted my hand I could see a black bone from his forearm protruding straight through the skin. He didn't seem bothered in the least. She was crying as the dirty fingers dug into her throat, pushing through the skin like it was made out of dough. She was thrashing so hard that one of her flailing fists smashed straight through the window. I managed to safely stop the car, but there was nothing I could do to break the indomitable grip around her neck. I spent the next hour searching the surrounding area with my flashlight. They were both gone without a trace. I considered calling the police, but I realized that if I wasn't already a suspect after the first body was found, then I'd definitely be one now that I was soaked in blood and my girlfriend was the one to disappear. If I see her again, do I pick her up? Or just keep driving and hope for the best?
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I put a camera on my cat. What I saw on the footage haunts me, by Head of Spectre. My daughter says I'm going crazy up here. I tell her that I've never been happier. I don't want to go back to the city and rot away in some old folks' home with a condescending nurse talking to me like I'm a child. I'm 85 and I'm as sharp as I ever was. Not quite as spry, no. But if anything really needs fixing, I have a telephone and I have the internet. I can call for help if I need it. I intend to live out my days here in this house, with the woods stretching endlessly on behind me. I'll breathe fresh air, relax in solitude and wait for the Lord to tell me that my time is done. Until then, I will do all I can to enjoy the time I have left on my terms. And number X200B. And number X200B. You don't wonder where he's going at all? She asked. I got the impression that she asked more out of genuine curiosity than anything else, and that told me she was trying to work her way up towards some kind of point. And you're not in the least bit curious, huh? Alright, what did you buy? The sales pitch was getting a little annoying and Sarah just smiled sheepishly. And number X200B. Okay. Well. I just thought it might be fun, you know. But they've got these cameras. People wear them when biking and stuff. You can attach them right to your body. Isn't that neat? It might be cool. It'll give you something to look at when he gets back. And number X200B. And number X200B. Looking at that harness and camera, the first thing that came to mind is, Charlie is not gonna be happy about this. But I kept that thought to myself. Aside from moderately annoying the poor cat a little bit, the whole idea seemed harmless enough. Besides, maybe we'd actually see something interesting when we looked back at the footage. And number X200B. When I woke up, it was dawn and I could see Charlie sitting on the banister of the porch, right outside the window, so I'd know he was there when I woke up. As soon as he saw me moving, he started mewling and pacing around. I picked myself up, stretched and shuffled over to the door to let him in. He scurried indoors and went straight for the food bowl, and as he did, I noticed that he'd left me something on the deck. And number X200B. Charlie's a good cat, despite his attitude. He's a graying Maine Coon with a mean face, although he always melted like butter in Adeline's hands. She was always inclined to baby him, but I always saw him as a fellow curmudgeon to pass the days with. I've never actually told anyone this, but I always imagined he'd have a bit of a southern drawl if he could talk, and that he'd sound a little bit like John Wayne. And number X200B. Charlie was out cold, with that contented look cats have when they sleep, and he paid me no mind as I got up to fetch the camera. I read over the instructions again and played with it for a bit before I actually tried to set it up. I recorded a little snippet of footage of Charlie napping there on the couch and popped that into my computer to review. The quality of the camera seemed fairly nice. It was easy enough to access the files. Might we well go and make sure the harness fit? And number X200B. He just chirped at me and sniffed my fingers. Then flopped back down to continue his rest. He didn't stay that way for long. Within the next 10 minutes or so, he was at the back door stretching and pacing, ready to set out on the road again. And number X200B. I checked to make sure his camera was on before setting him loose. Happy trails, Pilgrim. I said under my breath as he scampered outside and bounded down the stairs. He stopped to look back at me briefly before he took off into the forest, and I knew I probably wouldn't see him again until nightfall. And number X200B. And number X200B. Death. The police suggested that she'd gone on a hike alone. She'd done that before when we were younger. I didn't argue with them. I imagine that's just what she did. She woke up, forgetting the years that had passed, looked out into the crisp morning air, and decided to enjoy it. She walked out and she never came back in. And number X200B. Maybe she'd forgotten the trail, got turned around, and wandered deeper into the woods. Maybe she'd fallen, hurt herself, and never been found. Whatever ending had befallen her, I preferred not to think about it. It was better that I did not know, even if not knowing was the cruelest thing in the world. Sarah was there for me, of course. I suppose it's why she's doted on me so much in the year or so since. I wonder if deep down, she fears that one day I'll follow Adeline into those woods and she'll never see me again either. Have a nice adventure, old-timer? I asked. He just went straight for his food bowl. Dinner time. I let him gorge himself on dry food while I got a tin of wet food for him. That got his attention, and he hopped up onto the kitchen table to await his feast. And number X200B. You're a spoiled cat, aren't you? I asked. I'll bet if he could have responded, he'd have said something like. As he ate, I took the camera off his chest and undid the harness. He seemed happy to have it off. And number X200B. The camera was a little bit dirtier and had stopped recording some time ago. I vaguely recalled Sarah said something about the camera not having a hell of a lot of battery life. A couple of hours, or something. I probably wouldn't have gotten the full adventure, but that was fine by me. I doubt I'd have missed anything that interesting. And number X200B. I was tired and wanted to sleep, but the camera called to me. I can't quite explain the sense of urgency I felt about looking at that footage. Maybe I was more bored with my routine than I thought, and at the very least, the footage might be somewhat interesting. I gave Charlie a pat on the head before deciding a cup of tea might give me the boost I needed to go through that footage. There were only a couple of videos stored on the camera. I recognized a few as the test videos I'd taken by the thumbnails. The last one though. It must have taken its thumbnail from a random point in the video. It looked almost pitch black, as if something were obscuring the camera. I frowned at the sight of it and hoped like hell the file wasn't messed up somehow. I'd have needed to call Sarah if it was, and who knew when she could make it out to see me. And number X200B. Happy trails, pilgrim. I heard myself say before the back door opened and Charlie was set loose upon the forest. What followed was some rather neat-looking footage, as Charlie skulked around some bushes and tall grass. But I can't really say it was all that interesting. He climbed some fallen branches and made his way into one of the neighbors' yards. He watched them for a little while and even ate some treats they'd left out that seemed to be for him, the little glutton. Then he went back off into the woods. And number X200B. I'm sure at one point, I saw him pass the hiking trail that Adeline and I used to walk. I recognized a little creek that he walked along as he moved deeper into the forest. There was a familiar rustle of grass and water as he walked along, although the sound quickly became annoying, so I lowered the volume. I couldn't help but wonder just where the hell he was going out there, but I imagined he was probably just hunting. Maybe he'd kill a mouse or something. And number X200B. I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of something ahead of him. At a glance, it looked a bit like a bird's nest, although it seemed rather large. That said, I knew some birds liked large nests. The longer I watched, the more glimpses I caught of the thing. It was definitely a nest of some sort. Twigs and leaves had been deliberately put together to form something. Although this was bigger than any bird's nest I'd seen before. It seemed to completely dominate the top of one tree, and Charlie kept climbing as if he hadn't quite reached the top yet. Hell, I couldn't even see the sides of this thing. It seemed less like a nest and more like a wall of branches that seemed too big and too thick for a regular bird to lift. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. At last, he seemed to emerge onto the other side of whatever wall he'd just passed through. The light inside the nest was scarce. The interior was scattered with large black feathers, and I could see the sunlight glinting off bits of shiny things. Tin cans, children's toys, pocket watches, hood ornaments, jewelry. I could see the skull of some sort of animal, a large rodent of some kind staring emptily from the interwoven branches. I could see bones with smaller twigs wrapped around them, used almost as additional support for the structure of the nest, and as Charlie walked I saw something that made my heart begin to beat faster as a sick sensation filled my stomach. I've seen human skulls on TV, but never in real life. Had it not been for the matted black hair that still clung to the scalp, I might have been able to dismiss the idea that it was anyone else. But I knew that hair. I'd kissed that head 1,000 times, over a lifetime together. I remembered the laughing eyes in those now empty sockets. Even in death I recognized my Adeline. How many of her bones had been added to this nest? Her body alone couldn't have been what became its foundation. How many others had been claimed as construction materials for this nest? Oh God. Oh dear God. And number X200B. Charlie sat reverently before Adeline's skull, and I knew that he recognized her too. He'd almost certainly come there to mourn, to pay his respects or simply to be with her, even if she was long gone. I could only pray that whatever had done this to her had only taken her after she died. But from the gashes in the bone, I feared that wasn't the case. But what could have done something like this? What could have taken her? What could have? Charlie had been sitting quietly for almost 10 minutes, as I placed my hands to my mouth, stifling my own cries of grief. And number X200B. Through the gaps in the branches and bones, I could see something else had entered the nest, although I could not fully see what it was. All I could see was 2 scaled legs that each ended with a 4-toed claw, just like a bird of prey. And number X200B. I could hear the rustling of sticks, and the camera blurred as Charlie moved again to crawl out of the nest. He moved through the gaps in the branches as if he'd done this 1,000 times and found his way onto a long branch that led down. Then he ran for freedom, and the very last shot I saw in that video was the blur of the ground beneath him. And number X200B. And number X200B. For Adeline. TCC.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
My mother was a heartless monster, but sometimes that's okay, by Hyperobscura. I was raised by a woman with the unlikely name of Countess Fatima O'Rourke. Some would claim the Countess wasn't really my mother, and technically they would be right. I was adopted after all, but when you get deep into the soulfuckery of it all, they couldn't be more wrong. That woman, wretched old spiteful hag, was my mother in all the ways that count. The Countess was a cold-hearted, good-for-nothing excuse for a human being, I mumble. But I loved her. And it was true. It is true. She was heartless. Cold as an icicle shoved up a witch's tit. Human only by vague appearance, her morbidly thin crooked face like something out of a fucking Geiger painting or something. And her voice, man, that voice. It was like someone dragging a cheese grater across barbed wire. Harsh, relentless, emotionless. But to the point. Who are you? I asked. I knew who she was, of course. Everyone around these parts knew the Countess. Don't be daft, girl, she said. You know who I am. She stuck a finger under my chin, forcing it upwards. Collect your belongings, she said coldly. You're coming with me. And that's all there was to it. From that day on I was no longer Emma Fitzpatrick. I was Emma O'Rourke, the Countess' little pet project. She'd do that, you know. Wasn't abuse or anything, I guess, just a slap across the face. Hardly even left a mark. But you knew you'd fucked up, somehow, some way. And that was her true power. Instilling that fear of God, fear of Countess, deep in your heart. The slap was weak, low effort, more of a mistargeted high five against my chin than anything else. But it came from a grown-up. An adult. A countess. That shit hurts, you know, inside you. I didn't know it at the time, still a daft brat by all intents and purposes I suppose, but that was a sign of growing respect. She called me an O'Rourke. That was a huge fucking deal, and it took me years to realize that. I hadn't seen my uncle for years, and I counted my blessings for that fact. He was a true fucking asshole, neck as fiery red as they come. Then one day, months after my parents' disappearance, he just shows up, demanding that the Countess hand me over. Legally speaking, perhaps, the Countess noted. Spiritually, your species apart. He didn't need to complete the sentence, the rifle doing all the talking from that point on I suspect. Still, the Countess didn't back down. I'm not sure if she even knew how to. Get off my porch, you filthy hoodlum, I heard her say. Or you'll find my wrath vastly unproportional to your social standing. Minutes went by in dead silence. In my mind I like to believe she somehow stared him down. She could do that, you know. A single stare, targeted, amplified, of which would force you to your knees. Not only are they unlikely to ever find your parents, she said. But they failed utterly in their task to find my little one too, all those years ago. I knew the Countess wasn't always some ancient dried-up spinster, that she was once married, had a little daughter. That she was happy, unbelievable as that may seem given the now heartless, barbed wire-mouthed state of her. The eulogy drags on. My handkerchief is soaking wet, and I can't hold back the tears. Not a single one of them dare meet my gaze, heads kept low in awkward silence. Knowing the Countess, I just nodded, and shuffled behind her diligently, like some kind of strange pajama-clad teenage girl soldier. I followed her down the stairs, and into her study, a place I wasn't really allowed to be in, but I snuck in there from time to time anyway, to marvel at the vast collection of first editions, and play with the antique letter opener that kinda looked like a little ornate dagger. She stopped by her sizable mahogany desk, a gift from her late husband, and stood there silently, idly stroking the smooth surface for minutes. Normally, she started, her voice low, murmury, you'd expect some kind of hidden mechanism in a place like this. Pull on a book, turn a knob, something to that effect. She turned to face me, her gaze flickering unsteadily, like she wasn't sure what to say or do next. But in real life, things are exceedingly simple. Complicated on the surface, yes, but when you peel away all those layers, the remaining core is often a single, effortless truth. Well, what's down there? I asked. She grabbed me by the shoulders with both hands. I've told you already, girl, she said, a cold stare into my eyes. Truth. The Countess laughed. It's strange, you know. That's the first time I'd ever heard her laugh. Don't ever change, Emma O'Rourke, she snorted in between strained chuckles. But you're coming with me all the same. I stared at him intently. Yes, he said. Enough of this, the Countess grabbed me by the wrist, and hoisted me up to my feet effortlessly. She's heard enough. Come now, girl. Leave the vermin to rot in the darkness where they belong. The keys were right there, just sitting on a shitty wooden table. That's not something the Countess would ever purchase, my mind noted weirdly, as I snatched them up without the Countess noticing. I let her ascend the ladder almost to the top before I made my move. My father scrambled to his feet unsteadily, a look in his eyes I couldn't quite place, but I'd definitely seen somewhere before. Get the fuck out of my way, girl, he snarled. I'm gonna kill that fucking bitch. No, I started, my weak attempt at holding him back woefully futile. Even starved and abused for months, years, he was still twice my size. He flung me into the wall like I was nothing, and began the climb after the Countess. Countess, I sniffled, trying my best to push my father off of her. Mother. She smiled then, however briefly, before the pain returned. I don't know, she said. I truly don't know. But I know this one simple truth, unlayered and uncomplicated: you are my daughter. Her body was broken, my father's hate and violence having done too much damage to her lithe frame. She was dying, and we both knew it. I'm scared, Mother, I said, resting my head on her shoulder. She passed away seconds later, and I will live by her last words forever. You fucking vultures wouldn't understand. You fear everything. You feared what I'd find in that drawer. You feared what I'd do with the truth. You fear me even now, yet I've made sure the world will never learn what happened here. You fear me because I let my fake mother rot and die in that godless hole under the study. All you do is fear. The Countess had kept herself busy after her daughter had disappeared. She said it herself, the police did fuck all, and over the years she'd figured out exactly why. But before opening that particular can of worms, she had to deal with a domestic issue, as she so elegantly put it in her notes: fucking crazy old bitch. My parents had been doing it for years. Kidnapping innocent children of the filthy rich, ransoming their way to a small fortune, that they continued to piss away on drugs and alcohol and all the fucking clichés. But what happened to all the Penelopes? To the little ones with parents who couldn't fucking bother to part with their wealth? You guessed it. You knew it. Buried in the back garden, under rose bushes, azaleas, the fucking weeds. Dozens of tiny bones and skulls, beautiful lives never lived because of them. Because of you. The screams sort of take me out of the moment, but I can handle it. Strychnine poisoning is some seriously fucked up shit. I read about it extensively before I planned the service. Easily accessible, horribly painful. Doesn't take that much effort either. Simple. In closing, I say, head held high, proud posture of a countess. Fuck you all. And number X200B.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
If you're in bed at night and hear someone whistling, hide immediately, by Oddity 223. After cleaning my mess up and shutting the TV off, I brushed my teeth and climbed in bed. After 15 minutes or so I felt my eyes getting really heavy and I was in between that stage of being awake and asleep. That's when I heard it. A faint whistling. My ears perked up and I listened closely. It sounded like it was coming from my neighbor's complex. We have very thin walls in our apartment, so it's not unusual to hear him at times, but never at 2 in the morning. The whistle was to the tune of Silent Night. It stopped just outside my bedroom door and didn't make a sound. From where I was in the closet I could see the entrance to my bedroom door. I wish I had never opened my eyes back up, but of course I did. At the very top left corner I saw a deformed head poking around the corner. The top of my door frame was at least 6.5 feet tall and this thing was hunched over. It was huge. I couldn't make out any details of its face because my lights were off. The only lighting coming from the streetlights shining through my bedroom window. I'm actually glad I couldn't see its face because I probably would have fainted out of fear. Benny. It whispered. I squeezed my eyes shut yet again as I heard it enter my room. I could smell it now and it stunk horribly of rotted death. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I thought for sure I was gonna die. If anyone has any clue what this thing is and what I can do to make sure it doesn't come back, I'd really appreciate it. I have a feeling it will be back tonight and I'm completely terrified.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock, knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine. Stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
To be fair, I didn't know what to think either. Ellen was a quiet girl, senior in high school, straight B's, didn't really go on dates, didn't even really talk to boys. She has friends, sure, but not many of the male variety. They didn't. That afternoon I googled abortion clinics near us. Made a plan. I technically only had my driver's permit, but Ellen couldn't drive herself back after the procedure, so I figured what the heck, might as well try to get away with it. I shared with Ellen my plan, and although she was hesitant, I convinced her this was the only way she could get out of this. When we attempted to go out for ice cream the next afternoon, Dad stopped us. I helped clean up Ellen's mouth, wiping away the blood and managing to sneak down for some frozen peas to press against her jaw. She shook her head and looked at me. Over the next few weeks, Ellen would be nearly knocked over with morning sickness. Morning sickness is giving it too much credit. She had days where she was slumped over the toilet, unable to keep much anything down. If Mom caught her, she'd just say Ellen had the flu. If Dad caught her, he'd call out her prank and make her get dressed for school. As her belly swelled, Ellen became a joke of the school. Rumors spread about how she slept with one of the teachers to pass her class, or that she had no idea who the father was because she'd been fucked by anyone who would take her. To her credit, Ellen didn't ever respond to these rumors. She'd just simply carry on with how she had. I think sometimes even Ellen would doubt her own pregnancy. I'd catch her staring at the mirror, running her hands over the bump with the most quizzical expression, like she had no idea what was really in there. And no, the baby bump didn't convince my parents either. My mother began to restrict Ellen's food intake, saying that she really needed to watch her weight, even though Ellen had probably never been above 100 pounds her entire life. It was incredibly fucked up to have to sneak her food every night so she wouldn't be starving. Sometimes it'd be leftover lasagna from dinner, a lot of the time it was only like a pack of raisins or a snack bag of chips. It didn't matter, Ellen was always thankful. Months passed. Ellen graduated with passing grades and looked positively enormous, even with the graduation gown. She smiled during pictures, and I think that's one of the last times she sincerely smiled. When Ellen went into labor, I thought my dad might kill her. We didn't have locks on our door, but I blocked it off with a chair and prayed that would be enough. Ellen laid on her bed, clenching her sheets and screaming as another contraction shook her tiny frame. My niece was so tiny, so still, her skin was tinted blue, and I thought she was dead, until she opened her mouth and cried. I nearly jumped out of my skin when it spoke, its voice low and ominous. "Is the child healthy?" it asked. I gulped. I think so. My sister looked up and relief poured over her face. "You're here. I thought you wouldn't make it," she said, a true smile crossing her face. "I wouldn't forget you." The creature crossed to the bed and gingerly picked up my sister. I caught a glimpse of what was under the cloak's hood. Strangely, I think he was rather beautiful, with dusky blue features and eyes pure black. He nodded at me. He pulled a small pouch from his pocket, setting it in my hand. I undid the string and sparkling gold pieces poured into my hand. The strange man walked to the closet, opening it up. I could hear my niece squall and my sister excitedly tell the stranger how happy she was to see him. The door closed behind him. I got to my feet and opened it up. I've never seen my sister again, although sometimes late at night, I can see a small child peering in from my closet. She has my sister's eyes.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
Me, well, in total around 25. When I left there were around 17. Me, all males. Me, no one was under 4 or over 20. Me, not that I know of. They never laid a hand on me. They did shoot anyone that tried to leave the house. For tried to escape while I was there. One survived the gunshot and returned to the house the next day. He never said another word to any of us after that. A couple of people were found dead the next morning after they didn't follow a rule, but we never saw them get killed. Not even the person staying in the room with them would notice when they came into the room or how the person was killed. Me, I only saw 2 on guard at a time, but the people seemed to change all of the time. Me, it was a house. A really big house. Not very fancy, but it had around 12 rooms. We all had our names written on a whiteboard next to our specified room. Our fridge was always stocked with enough food for all of us. We had a TV in the living room, but we never could find any channels that worked on it. Each of our rooms had 2 beds and 2 small dressers which contained only 3 of the same outfits. We had a laundry room with a washer and a dryer, but they would only work on Thursday. Matt, 3 of the same outfits. What was the outfit? Matt, how many people died while you were there? Matt, could you ever look outside of a window and see what was around you? Matt, did anyone ever come inside of the house? Me, they would come inside to pick up the person that was ready to leave the house. 2 people would come inside and grab the person that was leaving. They would have 2 pieces of rope and a black blindfold. They would tie his arms and legs together and put the blindfold over his eyes. After that they would carry the person into the wall of trees. I have 5 days.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
For the longest time, my favorite form was improv. Improv is great. It hones your sense of humor and comedic timing. It boosts confidence. It teaches you to think quickly, react effectively, and find solutions, not just on stage, but in real life. When I was 12, I joined a community improv group. I was the youngest member by far. Half of them were over 30, at least a third were over 40. I fit in just fine, though. Theater is beautiful that way. Age doesn't matter, just your willingness to do what needs to be done. We were all willing. Except for Jeff. Everybody knows a Jeff. Your Jeff might be named Chris or Claire or Caitlin or Tucker or something else entirely. It doesn't matter. You still know him. Jeff is an expert. Jeff is superior. Jeff always knows the best way to do things, and woe unto you if you dare to defy him. Jeff knew everything about improv. Jeff was the best performer and the best director, because Jeff spent 20 years in New York City performing with the world's preeminent theater companies. Jeff was a dramatic genius, and he made sure we all knew it. Jeff did his best to control our meetings. He tried to set every scenario. He constantly interrupted scenes to criticize technique, delivery, and timing. He loved telling everyone that they were doing things wrong. This was a problem, because the second rule of improv is there are no mistakes, only opportunities. It wasn't just the improv group. It was everything. I heard him after meetings sometimes, complaining to other members. I got my hours cut. Me? I'm already doing all the work. I'm not doing hers, too. I mean, talk about mistakes. He even complained about his kids. I know Mitchell's on drugs no matter what he says, and who can blame him? If I had his condition, I'd kill myself. That'd be the kindest thing. Ben was very kind to Jeff, going to far as to let him set a couple scenarios each meeting. Even so, if Jeff was feeling especially pissy, he'd shut us down with one-word answers. Then he'd grin while his scene partners faltered, taking pleasure in their inability to keep the performance afloat without him. I still remember the way his eyes looked when he did this, wide, slate gray, glittering meanly. See, one-word answers are improvisational kryptonite. That's why the third rule of improv is don't ever stop at yes. Believe it or not, it's not enough to just say yes. You have to add something to the dialogue, or the performance stalls. Jeff didn't like this rule because it meant he had to rely on us. I guess you could say teamwork was Jeff's kryptonite. Unsurprisingly, the entire group was overjoyed when Jeff stopped attending. Everything became brighter, the scenarios seemed better, the dialogue more authentic. Old members, the ones Jeff had chased away, returned. Newcomers joined us. I even talked my friend Em into coming. Bringing Em was my dad's idea, her parents were divorcing, and she was quiet. Quiet kids, he said, always got the shaft. Invite her, he said. It'll be fun. Em, unfortunately, was a hard sell. I'd complained about Jeff for so long that I'd spooked her a little. He won't, I assured her. Ben wouldn't let him. Em finally smiled, gray eyes crinkling happily. Okay. But you probably have to pick me up and drop me off. Is that okay? Of course. I was ecstatic, finally, I'd have a friend my age at improv group. It was cause for celebration. Don't worry about it, Han, Dad said. She'll probably come next time. And Jeff walked in. Hi. Jeff shuffled forward. I cringed, even in the darkness, it was clear his hair was greasy and slicked back, his clothes filthy. Sorry I'm late. Got stuck at my ex-wife's place. He plopped into a seat at the end of the first row. Keep going. Every flat joke and shrill word made him tense, his shoulders came up high, he crossed his arms, he tapped his foot, he scowled. It drove me to anxious incoherence. Ben drew a deep breath. Jeff. I need you to leave. Then we'll all leave instead, said Ben. I was trapped. I wish I could say I ducked, or ran, or even prayed, but I didn't. I just stared. You're going to be in this scene, got it? You're 11 years old and your name is Emily. You're smart like your dad, but you hate him. He clucked his tongue sympathetically. You really him. You. Up. Jeff screamed. On stage, right now, or I shoot her. He trained the gun on me again and strode forward. I nearly fainted. His slick hair was thick with congealing blood and dark strings of viscera. Blood spattered his face and clothes. His shoes and the hem of his pants were soaked in it. Your name is Charlotte. You're 51, you're a fucking bitch, and you turned all your kids against your husband because you hate him. She uttered a small, dry sob. Jeff pointed at a teenager named Leah, who recoiled. You. Jeff snarled and charged forward. Ben tried to shield her, but Jeff shoved him out of the way. A brief scuffle ensued. I felt a wild moment of hope. Then I heard a gunshot. His voice tore through my head like a hurricane. I closed my eyes. "Good," Jeff said. "Lights up." Abigail screamed. I jerked to face her and watched, stunned, as Jeff brought the gun down on her temple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, until she lay dazed and mewling. "Mitch, don't cry. Don't cry. She's lying to you." Tears squeezed from Jeff's eyes. "I can prove it. I'll prove it if you come with me. Come stay with me." Tyler choked. Okay. Okay, Dad. I'll stay." Tyler tried to cover his face, but Jeff peeled his hands away and roared, "You don't. You don't. You want to stay with the lying bitch, go ahead." He threw Tyler into a corner. "Stay right here. Right here. It's the biggest mistake you'll ever make, you freak." Leah bolted off stage, screaming. "No." Jeff shrieked, aiming the gun. "Then fuck you." Then he turned to me. "Emily." He tried to smile. You're the best one. My favorite. You know that, right?" He shuffled forward. "You're the best. You know they lie. You want to come live with me, right? You want to live with Daddy." Something clicked. I could almost feel it, my paralyzed brain lighting up and shifting sluggishly. "Yes, he might be a mistake," I croaked, "but he wants to change and he knows you can help him." I nodded. "It's true. Isn't it, Ty, Mitchell?" I glanced over my shoulder. Tyler huddled in the corner, wide-eyed and wet-faced. Desperation threatened to overwhelm me. "Right, Mitch? You don't want to be a mistake, do you?" Tyler nodded as tears spilled down his cheeks. "Sorry, Dad. You know how I am. That's why I need your help, you know." "Yeah," Jeff said. "I know." He watched Tyler for an agonizing moment. "Then prove it." Jeff forced him over to Abigail's prone body. Blood sheeted over her face. Unfocused eyes drifted between Jeff and Tyler. Jeff pressed the gun into Tyler's hand. "Prove it," he repeated, and stepped back. "Dad," I whispered. "He's just a little scared. He makes mistakes. He needs help. You should let me help him." An epiphany dawned. Suddenly I knew what to say, knew what to do, but would Tyler understand? "I don't make mistakes," Jeff roared. "But you did. You gave Mitchell the gun, didn't you?" Tyler dared. Everyone converged on the exit. I ran blindly, dimly aware that someone was carrying Leah, and others were supporting Ben. We formed a desperate scrum at the door, barely managing to keep ourselves in check. But we did. Ben, Leah, and Abigail survived. Jeff did not. Tyler's aim had been preternaturally true. I found out later that he was a target shooter. He and his mom went to the range every weekend. Talk about luck. I learned that Jeff killed his wife and children a few hours before recreating it at improv group. My friend M was his daughter. I hadn't known. I suppose it wouldn't have made a difference either way. I think I'll always remember the rules.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
The Snake, by Sean Arthur Cox. I was 5 years old when I first vomited up the snake. A second grader cornered me on the playground and shoved me off the swing because he wanted a turn. My palms skinned, knees dirty, I climbed to my feet, tears in my eyes and fists clenched in sorrow and rage. And there he sat, on my swing. Laughing. The teacher didn't believe us. She just told us that I must have seen a worm and eaten it, and that I shouldn't eat worms. That was the first time, but not the last. "What the hell?" he shouted. "Do you know how much this shirt costs? Why would you do that, Dick? You splashed me first," I said, utterly indignant. "Yeah, but your shirt is from Kmart. No one cares if it gets messed up." He'd never brought up the fact that my family was poor before, but saying it then, that my clothes didn't matter, that I didn't matter because I was poor, set me off. As he stormed away from me, muttering every curse word a seventh grader knows, I stood there wet and shivering from the cold and from my growing anger. My cheeks burned hot with hatred, and I could feel it rising, large and venomous. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to ignore it, to get the poison out of him, but he shoved me back down. I sat there alone and crying, drenched in mud and shame. We never spoke again. In high school, it was a struggle to keep the snake down. I have always been short and unathletic. I struck out twice in t-ball. I was bookish. I was into theater and sci-fi. Needless to say, I got picked on a lot. My throat was in constant pain for years forcing the thing down. But I could always feel it, down in my guts. Growing larger day by day. I couldn't breathe, and my eyes were too filled with tears to see clearly, but I knew what was happening. The snake raced down the road after the car. I lost sight of it, but soon after heard a loud bang, like a gunshot or. But I knew what really happened. The snake my snake had escaped, had tracked him down, had bitten his tire as he raced away. Some part of me felt guilty for what happened. When I would see him limp down the hallways. When I heard his voice fade away when the rest of the team would talk about state championships. But then I would see the way he stared at me, read the things he wrote in my yearbook, and in my stomach, I could feel the snake sleeping soundly, contentedly. One night, we were drinking some bourbon we'd snuck out of his dad's liquor cabinet and I told him about the snake. At first, he thought I was speaking metaphorically. No, I told him. It was a literal snake. He laughed, then got serious. He probably thought I was crazy, but he never said it, never implied it, and that meant the world to me. I loved that guy. The thing about the snake is it wants to be out. It wants to be anywhere but inside of me, except when it needs to rest and recover. Facing no resistance, it didn't hurt me at all coming up. It flew from me and wrapped around the drunk bastard and began to squeeze the life out of him. He never even saw it coming. Who would? Who would expect an anaconda to fly out of a guy's mouth and crush you? No one. Definitely not that drunk guy. I heard his bones break but he didn't scream. Oh, he tried. I watched his face contort in agony, but the snake was so tight around him, he didn't have the air to make a peep. And I watched it happen. I didn't try to wrestle it back in. I just watched. "You don't want to do this tonight," Julian said, and I got the distinct impression he'd had run-ins with these guys before. They laughed to each other, and mid-laugh, one swung hard, punching Julian in the face, sending him sprawling. The other, taking me by surprise, got me in a choke hold. With my friend out of the fight, the first came and started dropping blow after blow into my abdomen. I could feel the snake stirring deep within me, but I didn't know if I would be able to let it out even if I wanted to. The second man's arm constricted around my throat as surely as the snake had the other man a week ago. I couldn't get air out, let alone a snake. Would it be able to come up? Would I want it to, knowing what it was capable of? My vision started to blur around the edges, the world slowly turned black, and I could see the first had pulled away and begun to give Julian another barrage of punches. I woke and found Julian beaten and bloody, but raining kicks down on one of the attackers. My snake lay curled on me, waiting for me. It lazily slunk toward me and disappeared down my throat. I didn't want the thing inside of me, but given that it had saved me twice in 2 weeks, I didn't fight it much. I only resisted a little, so it only hurt a little. "Let's get out of here," I said, my stomach in knots. A few blocks later, Julian broke the silence. Maybe it's just a tool," he said. "A tool's not good or evil. It's all in how you use it." The last words hung extra hard in the air, pointed, accusatory. I had a lot to think about. ////. I didn't fight it anymore. The snake wants to be out. It wants to grow and feed and strike. And it became so easy to let it out. I almost wondered why I held it back in the first place. It was so easy to point it at others, at the monsters, the assholes, the people who wronged me. Too easy. A few months later, the snake still dominated the news. It had killed 9 people. Still no one knew where it had come from. Experts couldn't agree on what kind it was. Julian and I went out for drinks a lot. One night, after a long search for some asshole deserving of my special friend, we gave up and made our way back to Julian's. We'd both had a bit to drink and stumbled to the couch. Julian looked at me deeply and said, "I never thanked you." "Yeah, man. No problem." Then he leaned in to kiss me. Maybe it was the booze. Maybe it was residual buzz from getting away with something, from sharing a secret that big. Maybe it was something deeper. Whatever it was, for a while I let him. And then, I stopped him. Some old, long-forgotten circuit from my conservative upbringing kicked in, and I pushed him off. "I'm not gay," I said. He gave me an incredulous look, a wounded look. And I hated him. I hated him for calling me gay. I hated him for that hurt expression, like it was my fault we would never be together. For touching some raw nerve I didn't know I had. And all the while I hated him. I hated him for pushing the issue. I hated him for making it so easy to let the snake out. I hated him for kissing me. I hated him for being right about me, even if I wasn't ready to admit it yet. But I couldn't stop it. I sat there, weak and impotent, and I watched it happen. And the hate grew, and the snake grew until it swallowed him whole. I hated it. I hated Julian. I hated those assholes who taught me to let it out so easily. I hated Carter and the guy from chemistry. I hated the kid from 2nd grade. As far as I knew, there was no snake before him. It was all his fault. I hated everyone, and I didn't want it in me anymore. So it left me. But the snake attacks continued. And I knew what it was doing. Lurking in the darkness, slipping through shadows, feeding on my anger, killing people who made me mad. These days, I read the news a lot. I look for pundits and politicians and columnists and crimes reports. I look for people to hate. And it's so easy to find people to hate these days. I read the news and surfed the internet looking for things for my snake to eat. Anything to keep it busy. Anything to keep it from tracking down the one person I really, truly despise. Sometimes, I worry I don't keep it busy enough, because sometimes I lay in bed at night, and I am certain I hear hissing outside my window.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
Ever since I woke up from surgery, Everyone tells me that I'm married to a man I've never met, by P. Sim. Part 2. Part 3. It's been 10 months since I first remember meeting Brandon, but, according to the rest of the world, he and I became a couple 3 years ago. It all started after the surgery. When I awoke from my anesthesia-induced sleep, I nodded groggily as the doctor listed common post-operative symptoms, like drowsiness, dizziness, and disorientation. Then, 2 nurses wheeled me down an elevator, through the main lobby, and outside the hospital. I tried to scream. I tried to explain to the nurses that they were delivering me into the arms of an abductor. But, in my weakened state, all I could manage were weak whimpers and incoherent mumbles that the man and nurses dismissed as side effects and temporary confusion as they lifted me into the car. Meanwhile, a sense of absolute exhaustion gradually descended over me. The last thing I remember before darkness overcame me was the man's loving smile, and 3 words that haunted the frightening dreams that followed: "I love you." Soon enough, however, the same man stepped into my room. He placed a tray with 2 slices of toast and a small fruit smoothie on a bedside table and, upon seeing that I was awake, asked me how I was feeling. The scream I uttered left him flustered and pale-faced. "April, what's wrong?" he asked. He knew my name. Get out, now!" I hollered. "Okay," he said quietly as he backed out of my room. I mustered what energy I had to leap out of bed and lock the door. I found my phone in its usual place atop a dresser. With trembling hands, I dialed 911. When the police arrived, the man, who identified himself as Brandon Harrison, spoke calmly as the officers interrogated him. "Don't listen to him," I begged. "He's lying. You can't be serious. You're not going to leave me alone with this man dash. Has he hurt you? Threatened you in any way?" The officers left after my friends and family did the opposite. Every person I contacted swore to the same version of events, that I married Brandon almost a year ago, and that we'd been living together as a couple for even longer. All of it left me absolutely baffled and confounded. I had no idea what to do. I just knew that I did not feel safe having Brandon in the house with me. Over the next few days, I met with practitioner after practitioner. Many had records or notes reflecting my marriage to Brandon, such as me mentioning him in response to routine questions, and none could clearly explain what was happening. They all agreed that I exhibited no signs of mental or physical illness that could explain why 3 years of memories of my husband had somehow vanished from my mind. I was sitting on my living room couch, tall glass of red wine in hand, when Brandon called. I hit decline, took a big gulp of my drink, and leaned my head back against the wall. Logically, the only answer is that, somehow, everyone else was correct. This man really was my husband, and I was losing my mind, or in denial, or something. As much as I felt otherwise, no other explanation was possible. We talked for hours. He asked about my health and the results of my recent appointments. I decided to call my mother again. "Honey," she told me. "I would never lie to you, ever, and you know that. So listen to me when I say this. Brandon is your husband, and you need to let him back into your life." Months passed with us living together like roommates. At first, we handled our own meals, but after a while, we started cooking for each other. Sometimes we'd sit at opposite ends of the couch and watch TV. We took many walks together at a nearby public park. These outings were generally uneventful, except for one occasion when Brandon intervened to stop a crazed woman from harassing me. I'd been giving her dog, a sweet ridgeback who'd run up to me, some scratches and pets, when she started to scream at me. As I backed away from the dog, she made a hostile, guttural sound, and I noticed what looked like narrow streams of blood running down from her eyes as she wailed. She charged at me, but Brandon intervened, shoving her off me and telling her to leave me alone. Another bystander restrained her as we hurried away, and I thanked Brandon for looking out for me. I took a deep breath. I'm being a jerk, keeping the bed all to myself. We should set up a rotation in terms of who stays there, and who is in the basement. He continued. I have nightmares sometimes. In them, you're living your life without me. I try to talk to you, but it's like I'm a ghost, and you can't hear me or see me. When I wake up, I'm covered in sweat. You used to be there to comfort me, but now I'm all alone down in the dark basement. I miss you. Brandon, I'm just not there yet. He sighed. Okay. I finally asked him a question I'd been holding back for weeks. Do you think I'm lying? About not remembering you? No, he responded, abruptly. Not at all. I don't know what it is, if it was some fluke side effect of the surgery, or some kind of undiagnosed condition, but I know that you would never lie about something like this. I wouldn't have married you if I didn't trust you completely. As much as I appreciated his words, the exchange left me feeling terrible. We were a married couple, after all. I had to assume that we'd done plenty of things together. But, now, I didn't even want to fall asleep in the same room as him. The truth was that I continued to feel no meaningful attraction towards Brandon. I'd developed an affection for him, sure. He seemed polite, self-sacrificing, and protective of me. Perhaps he was good-looking, too, in an objective sense. But he sparked no romantic interest in me. It made me feel awful, given how kind and patient he was being to me. Still, I figured the least I could do was return some of the kindness he'd shown me by switching out our rooms as I'd offered. I wanted it to be a surprise for him. After he left for work the next morning, I set about moving the belongings he'd brought to the basement back up to the bedroom. I decided to wash the sheets and pillowcase he'd been using as well. Its aged, browned pages were of uneven sizes. Curious about their contents, I tried opening the book, only to discover that it was locked by a narrow, metal clasp with a tiny keyhole. For the moment, I elected to leave the book where I'd found it and not mention it to Brandon while I gathered more information. I had a friend who might be able to help me, after all. I took a picture of the cover, texted it to May, and carefully put the book back in its place. What? Compared to the cacti and succulents around it, Brandon was smaller in size. Yet, on a closer look, I discerned that the clusters of spines that covered it appeared particularly long and jagged. You're ridiculous, May. She giggled. That's what people keep telling me. But, anyway, I assume you're here about that picture you sent me? I nodded. I hated the concerned expression on May's face. It was the same look of pity I'd seen on so many people. And, let me guess, your current theory is that this book has something to do with you forgetting all about Brandon. I know how it sounds, May. I just don't know what else to think. You used to be obsessed with the occult, and I thought maybe you'd recognize the symbols on the front. I felt my face grow red with embarrassment as I realized how unhinged I must have been sounding. May put her arm around me. April, I'm glad you came to me. Don't ever be afraid to talk to me, okay? Olivia and I have both seen some strange things, ourselves, things that most people think are impossible. So believe me, I'm not dismissing your theory offhand. But I don't recognize the image you sent me, and I turned up nothing when I researched it this morning. My best guess is that it's just a fancy diary of some kind. Nothing more. Yes. I came across a bald man placing a book titled Crafting with Human Skin on a top shelf. Excuse me, I asked. Do you work here? There's a symbol, a pattern, that I saw. I have a picture of it. I'm wondering if you might know what it means." "Well?" I asked. "No," I said, a mix of puzzlement and relief running through me, "I think not." / "It's okay, April. Really. Brandon, did we have plans? Like, life plans moving forward?" "Yeah," he responded. "We were trying to have a kid. We had it all planned out, names and everything, Hannah for a girl, Martin for a boy. But, don't worry about that. We can take things one step at a time." I felt secure enough around him that I fell asleep quickly that night. I awoke several hours later to the sounds of Brandon having a nightmare. He was sweating, shaking, and making low, panicked murmurs. He calmed down quickly. For a moment, he seemed to wake up, ever so slightly. "Thank you. I love you, April." "I love you too," I whispered back. He quickly went back to sleep as I realized what I'd said. I'd finally spoken those words, and I'd done so spontaneously. Maybe things really are going to work out, I thought as I dozed off again. "What are you doing here? How do you know my name?" I pulled out my phone. "Emma? Who the hell is Emma?" "1 second," he said, as he merged the van onto the interstate. He then reached into the glove box and removed a Polaroid photo, which he passed to me. In the picture, I was in an orange sundress in a park by the harbor with a beaming expression of joy on my face. A woman I vaguely recognized was kneeling before me. In one hand, she held a leash that connected to a Ridgeback puppy. In her other, she held out a beautiful golden ring. My what? No, it couldn't be. "I believe you ran into her a little while ago." I realized where I'd seen her. She was the crazy lady at the park, the one Brandon had protected me from. But, why, if that's true? He continued as I tried to digest what he was saying. Grussel casts illusions that are almost impossible to see through. And he can command people to do what he wants. It takes incredible willpower to even notice his influence, and even more to do anything about it. Even temporary resistance can only be achieved at the cost of severe physical punishment. I remembered the blood running down the woman's, Emma's, face as she scrambled after me. Had she been trying to tell me who she, and who I, really was? I thought, too, about May's bloody accident, just as she directed me to the one person who had the answers I was seeking. "Okay, so, Mr. Call me Jean." "But why me, in particular?" I asked as the car turned down a dirt road that led through a thick forest. "I can't say for sure," he replied. "But I suspect it's because you're a challenging target, for a lot of reasons. He could prey on the mentally unwell, or those easily susceptible to influence, but fooling them doesn't give him the kind of power he craves. He chose you because he knew how skeptical you'd be. If he behaves as the texts describe, he'll discard you in a few years, once he's sucked all the life out of you, and then he'll move on and find a new victim. April, I need to ask, how successful has he been so far?" "What do you mean?" "Well, prior to this ride, how convinced were you that he was telling the truth? That you were, in fact, married to him?" Jean turned to me, a worried expression on his face. "You told him what?" "Watch out!" I cried, pointing to the road. But it was too late. "You're fortunate to have such a loving family," he told me. "They've hardly left the hospital over the last few days. Do you mind if I let them come in to see you now that you're awake?" I'm not sure why the doctor asked, as I lacked the strength and muscle control to respond either way. The doctor got up, opened the door, and called into the hallway. "She can see you now."
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
Last night, I packed up my suitcase like I always do. A few pairs of shorts and t-shirts, nothing too complicated. 2 bathing suits, some flip-flops, and those mini toiletries you can buy from the travel aisle in Target. My running shoes and some sports bras were included, too. I love to work out, even when I'm on a vacation. It's a blessing and a curse. Your flight has been rescheduled due to inclement weather, Ms. Inclement. I just checked my flight information and the weather. Are you sure? I was wary of the previous mistake with my bag's weight, and felt sure something similar was happening now. Can you give me a few minutes? I need to call someone. What? That's crazy. Hold on, let me pull into a parking lot. Let me ask the customer service assistant one more time, okay? I considered putting the phone on mute, but decided against it so that my boyfriend could hear the conversation. The flight attendant offered me the same information again, and called her supervisor over to verify. The supervisor even made a call to triple check. I nodded and thanked them for rescheduling my flight. When I picked the phone back up, I could hear the confusion in my boyfriend's voice. That's so weird. I'm on my way back. Hang tight, I'll text you when I'm there, okay? Jesus Christ, please answer. I saw the news. Please tell me that wasn't your flight. Please. The second voicemail was similar, please, just answer. They aren't releasing details. Please be landing any minute. Please. Just. The line crackled with her sobs. A shiver ran up my spine and my blood froze in my veins. I'm scared. I feel paranoid, like someone is watching me. Who do I owe? What is happening to me? And, why me? Hey everyone. I just updated. Part 3.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Well, that was weird, by Sevatar 40k. Well, that was weird. I couldn't remember it at all. In fact, I couldn't actually remember anything about Ryan. The only things about him that I could bring to mind were that his name was Ryan and we'd been best friends since we were kids. I could remember the basic outline of our story but not a single detail. Damn dude, neither do I. Ryan laughed, that's fucking weird as hell man. What the fuck, Ryan? Why can't I remember anything about you? I have no fucking clue my dude. Ryan laughed. Ryan was laughing so hard that he was gasping for air. It was really pissing me off. Didn't he realize how fucking serious this was? He probably did, and that's why he was laughing so hard. He was laughing at me. My mental state was in ruins and he found that hilarious. I probably had a psychic alien brain parasite from hell squirming through my gray matter feasting on my memories and he thought it was funny. That really pissed me off. God damn it Ryan, shut your fucking mouth before I rip your fucking throat out. Without even bothering to wait for a response I leapt out of the couch and charged at him like a bull. I tackled him to the ground and plunged my thumbs into his eye sockets. I started slamming his head against the hardwood floor over and over again, feeling his skull crack and shatter as his brain fell out onto the floor, which I promptly smashed into a puddle of goo and started shoveling into my mouth. Are you alright, dude? He asked gently. Heh, yeah, of course. Okay, you had me worried. That was some pretty hardcore brain surgery you had this morning, and the doctor said it could take 10 to 50 years before you feel normal again. Not anymore. Hey dude, do you remember the first time we met? Asked my friend Ryan with a huge smile stretched across his face. Hell yeah man. It was, we were at Vietnam. We met in Nam. What the fuck, Ryan? How did we serve in Vietnam when we were born in the 90s? I have no fucking clue, my dude. Ryan was laughing so hard that he was gasping for air. It was really pissing me off. I saved his worthless life in that trench and he just fucking forgot. Maybe I should have let him die. Hey man, did we take any shrooms? What the hell kind of stupid-ass question is that? Ryan laughed, barely able to choke out the words through his wheezing laughter. Are you fucking retarded or something? I tried to stand up when I realized I couldn't. Thick, heavy chains were draped across my legs and chest, securing me to the couch. What the hell? I struggled against them but couldn't move even a fraction of a millimeter. If anything, the chains were tightening and threatening to cut off my breathing. I tried to scream for Ryan, but my jaw was squeezed far too tight for me to open my mouth. My only option was to go down, deeper into the couch. Not only was that a safe place to hide, but it gave me a greater range of movement. Yo, Ryan, what's up man? Just taking a demon shit. Nice. So, what the hell is going on? Something is clearly not right. A brain parasite? How the hell would I get a brain parasite? Is that even a real thing? Seriously? How the fuck did I get a brain parasite? Pork, dude. I told you not to vacation in Vietnam. Sure, everything's cheap as fuck, but they don't have the same quality assurance when it comes to the handling of livestock. Look it up on Wikipedia if you don't believe me. As I looked around trying to make sense of everything, it dawned on me that this couch seemed awfully familiar. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the walls and floors looked like a brain. Likely, my brain. So, is this my brain? Am I literally inside my brain? He was right, of course. If I literally went inside my brain, that would mean that my brain was inside of my brain, like some sort of brainception. That would be ridiculous. Nah dude, that's just dumb. You're probably in a coma and you're hallucinating or something. I mean, you do have a parasite inside your brain, so you've likely suffered brain damage after all. Or maybe a near-death experience. Hell, maybe you're already dead and this is hell. Fuck do I know, I'm not a neurologist. So, why are you here? I get why I'm here, seeing as how this is my brain and all, but why do you keep showing up? Wait a minute. Are you the brain parasite? Then who the fuck is Ryan? Well, that's weird. Aside from Tinea Solium being a pretty stupid name, it still didn't explain much. Why did I think he's Ryan? Actually, I still didn't even know who Ryan was, let alone remember the first time we met. Nope, I'm just your standard cyclophilid cestode of the family Tineidae. I was just an egg when you ate undercooked pork with my mom inside it. I hatched in your intestines, then made my way into your cerebral cortex to start a family. This was all pretty hard for me to process, I have to admit. It didn't much matter because I woke up in a post-surgery hospital bed. The doctors managed to explain the situation a lot better than Tinea did. I had indeed gained a brain parasite, so they had to operate to remove the brain cysts and insert a shunt to drain fluid buildup. Hell yeah man. It was, we were at Well, that was weird.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
An unmarked building in Colorado is using as much electricity as Small City, by Tobias Wade. But I don't want you to worry, he added. I worked here 20 years and nothing going on will interfere with your job. Looks normal enough to me, I replied. Was this some kind of test? Single open cycle gas turbines, probably around 140 megawatts, right? This had to be a test. It didn't seem fair since they already offered me the job, but there wasn't any harm in playing along. Are we not producing at capacity? We are. Hell, they'd take more if they could get it. What are they doing up there? I don't understand. Nathan clapped me on the back like I had just won an award. And they like to keep it that way. So if you want to stick around like I have, then you'll do what I did and keep your nose out of their business. Besides that, everything should run pretty smooth for you here. But Nathan was wrong. Right from the start, nothing ran smoothly. First of all, the other plant workers acted mighty strange toward me. Every one of them kept their eyes locked on the floor, all wearing that same glassy-eyed complacency I had seen in Nathan. They followed orders readily enough, but they did so without the slightest initiative or individuality. I caught one guy, Robert, chewing his pencil for 10 minutes straight in the break room. I asked him what he was doing, and he mumbled that his schedule dictated a break every 2 hours. As soon as his 10 minutes were up, to the damn second, I think, he stood up and left the room without another word. And then there was Mattis calling every few weeks. Those were the most awkward, forced conversations I've ever had to sit through in my life. Clearance code. Would you consider everything to be more or less ordinary than usual? Have you had any unusual requests for output to anywhere besides that building? In an emergency, how fast could you shut down power to everything if you had to? The mystery was unbearable to me, but I was trained to follow orders, and despite everything I could have maybe still accepted the situation if it wasn't for the black van which came by 2 days ago. Shuttle service, they called it, although it was only picking up Robert and another technician named Elijah. I watched the van take them up the dirt road winding into the hills. Yesterday morning they were back at work and I asked them what happened, but they both just laughed and said they went out for a few drinks. Even the laugh felt wrong, like they weren't doing it because they thought it was funny, but rather made the sound in the hopes that I would find it funny and move on. Any power cuts have serious repercussions here. Please resolve the issue as quickly as humanly possible. Humanly. Maybe my discomfort had me imagining things, but somehow it seemed like he said that in the same way you or I might say, he's pretty smart for a dog. I don't suppose I'm allowed to ask Dash, I started. Won't do you any good, the guard answered promptly. I don't know any more than you, and that's already more than enough. Have you ever been inside? He shook his head, glancing around nervously. Then in a hushed whisper. I never seen anything, but sometimes I'll hear things. Like something is down there that don't want to be. I raised my eyebrow, hoping he'd continue. He opened his mouth like he was going to say more, then shook his head. None of my business, none of yours. How long is this gonna take? Elijah was even worse. He was microwaving a cup of noodles in the break room, anxiously pacing back and forth like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. Then it beeped and he actually collapsed to the floor in shock. I retrieved his glasses for him and helped him to his feet, noticing his eyes were so pale as to be almost completely white. I'm positive they weren't like that before he went into the building. Robert and Elijah first pickup service today. Good for 5 rounds each before they're used up. Current staff. Round 0, 3. Round 1, 5. Round 2, 11. Round 3, 4. Round 4, 2. Round 5, 1. I am the only one at round 5. Requesting replacement for myself in 2 months after my final round. Suggest replacement exempt from rounds to preserve his functionality. May God have mercy on our souls. I scanned back further through his logs and saw a list of similar numbers. It seems like every week another pair of people are sent to the building and their rounds are increased by 1. Elijah was currently a 4, while Robert was a 3. There was also a schedule of future pickups. I scanned ahead a few pages and didn't see my name anywhere. It was a relief at first, although the more I searched, the more unnerving it was to be the only one not on the list. Well, here goes nothing. May God have mercy on our souls. Part 2. Part 3.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I Tried to Switch Bodies with My Sister, by Blair Daniels. If this were a Disney move, I'd be the evil sister. Sometimes, when I tell her, she'll laugh, that tinkling, feminine, beautiful laugh, and go, "Oh, Cora, don't be jealous. We should love each other like sisters, not fight over stupid things." Last night was the breaking point. We went to a party at one of the fraternities. I waved over one of my classmates, Robbie, from physics. But as soon as I did, and his eyes fell on Eva, it was all over. No matter how many jokes I made, no matter how many times I touched his shoulder, he barely gave me a second look. A woman sat on the floor, in the middle of a pentagram, wearing a hooded robe. She looked only a few years older than me, her blonde hair poking out from under the hood. "I'm so sorry." Well. An easy spell. I can do it for you, but the question is, can you pay the price? What's the price? She broke into laughter. "I'm just messing with you. The payment is money, $1,000. Cash or credit?" I gingerly lowered myself down on the pentagram. "After it's done, will she know we've been switched?" She shook her head. "No. I'll cast a memory reformation spell, too, which will reform her memories and make her think she was always you." I smiled. "Good." Out of the darkness, a silhouette began to take form. A woman, old and withered, with pentagrams and symbols cut up and down her skin in white, shining scars. She stared at me with 2 deep red eyes, and I felt my blood run cold. "Do you need help, dear?" she asked. I stared at her, the realization sinking in. I was. Oh, yes. A smile crinkled her pale skin, and her eyes twinkled. "You were in here, looking to switch bodies with your better-looking sister, and to make sure she never remembered any of it."
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
Those were the last words in my grandfather's diary, which was found open on the table at which he shot himself in 2019. I was the one who found his body, a hole blasted through his head with his old army pistol. I can still see the scene to this day. Blood dripping down the sides of the desk. The metallic scent on the air. I don't think it'll ever leave me. They're still out there. Who, what, was out there? After translating and reading his diary, I know better. That's what I'm here to tell you about. I know what he was keeping quiet about, and why he took his life in 2019. It's all in the diary he kept during his time in the army. That's probably what got him where he ended up. September 2nd, 1958. Our commander is a hard man named Sergei Yahuntov. He talks little, and is ruthless in disciplining his soldiers. I have only seen him once, on my arrival here. He gave us our standing orders, which must be obeyed at all times. These orders are what give me pause about this whole situation. They seem ludicrous, but several men have already been punished for not keeping them in mind. September 5th, 1958. Today I befriended another soldier stationed here. His name is Yuri Ivanovich, a private like me. He seems talkative and friendly, an unusual trait among the soldiers stationed here, and he was eager to talk once I told him I was new at the base. We were discussing the strangeness of the place, and the secrecy surrounding it, when I summoned the courage to ask him about what our purpose here was. Yuri, I began carefully. Do you know anything about what this place is supposed to be? What is level 5? And what is that screaming the orders mention? Yuri's smile faded. He leaned in closer to me. It's best you don't ask about level 5, Mikhail, he said under his breath. Nothing good ever comes of talking about that place. Keep your head down, and you might be lucky enough never to go down there. My skin crawled. Yuri was usually a quite amiable man, but now he was deadly serious. Yuri would tell me no more, and left me at my post with more questions than answers. September 11th, 1958. Yuri was in our unit. He had regained his usual happy demeanor since our conversation, and seemed almost untroubled by the biting cold. I hoped it wouldn't come to that. We only came across a single group of travelers, and thankfully they were going in a direction which would take them away from our base. We departed shortly after making sure they weren't a threat. It was a complete accident that all three of us were stationed at the same guard post. Yuri, always talkative, took no time in starting a conversation to make the hours go by faster. The soldier's name is Ivan. He is a thin man, with nervous eyes that flick from side to side constantly. He talks in an anxious whisper. Yuri wasn't lying. Whatever Ivan saw at level 5, it has left him changed forever. Yuri wouldn't let me talk with him about his time there. But I didn't even want to, once I saw the man's state of mind. It would be cruel to remind him of something so obviously traumatizing. But even so, I left the meeting more anxious about this place than before. The next few months go by with not much interesting happening. My grandfather spends most of his time either out on patrol in the surrounding areas or on guard duty in various parts of the base. He is never sent down to level 5, and doesn't inquire more about it. The next interesting entry is in mid-December. December 15th, 1958. We were on guard duty, checking the staff going from level 4 to level 3. It had been a long shift, 5 hours so far, with 3 more to go. It was nearing midnight, when things started going to shit. It was a quiet moment, and the corridor was empty except for me and Yuri, when the man appeared. He was a researcher, not a soldier. Balding, with a pair of spectacles and a round, red face. He was strangely hunched over, dragging his feet and looking at the floor. I figured he was simply tired after a long shift. "Comrade, I need to see your authorization before you can leave level 4. The man was looking at the ground again. Now he was closer to me, I could see him shivering. He was mumbling something under his breath. I leaned closer in to hear him. "They can't get out. They can't get out. We've left them there for 5 years. 5 years." I backed away slightly, raising my firearm. Yuri could see something was wrong, and aimed his gun at the man's head. "I need you to lie down right now," I said, panic rising in me. No amount of military training could prepare me for one of our own to behave like this. Yuri circled around, moving behind the man. The researcher didn't seem to notice, his attention totally fixed on me. He stumbled forwards, and I aimed my gun in nerveless fingers. "They can never get out," he said, his voice trembling. "If any men are trapped in level 5, we will get them out," I said, trying to sound soothing and calm even as my heart hammered in my chest. He looked me dead in the eyes. "It's the things in them that can never escape." He lunged forward, making to run past me. A gunshot rang out through the corridor. The researcher crumbled to the floor, blood leaking from his chest. "What is your first standing order, Private?" he asked, walking face to face with us and looking at me. "He did not, sir." Yuri stepped up to Sergei. "Permission to speak, sir." "Granted." "The blame is mine, sir. I told Private Mikhail Sidorov to hold fire. I have overstepped my rank and disobeyed standing orders." I opened my mouth in shock. Yuri was lying, he was protecting my skin at his own risk. He shot me a quick glance, and shook his head almost imperceptibly. I shut my mouth. "Yes, sir. Besides, this way I can tell you about what's down there when I get back." December 16th, 1958. December 17th, 1958. Yuri still hasn't come back. What is happening down there? Permission to speak, sir. My voice was hoarse with trepidation of this conversation. He looked at me, a sort of apathetic curiosity coming over his face. He glanced down at my name tag. "Sir, 5 days ago my friend, Private Yuri Ivanovich, was sent to level 5. He hasn't come back since then. I am worried about him. You are aware that discussing our work here is not recommended, aren't you, Private?" I had gone too far to back out now. I could only press on. "Yes, sir. I am. I might have made a huge mistake today." December 21st, 1958. This morning, we received our orders for the day, as usual. Guard duty, maintenance or patrol, that's all I've ever done here. The officer read down the list, reciting the names and duties for the first part of the day. I was always at the end of the list, and only started paying attention towards the end of his monologue. Turgenev, guard duty, level 4, 0800. Kuznetsov, guard duty, level 4, 0800. Chernyshevsky, patrol, 1000. Mikhail Sidorov. Report to level 5. Part 3.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Don't Fear the Reaper, by Harry Dresden Wizard. I'll say it right now, I grew up in a broken home. Dad drank. Mom drank. That might be why I've never touched a drop. But I'm getting on a tangent here. Then my mom started drinking and became numb to the whole thing. First Dad kept hitting her and left me to cry in my room. I guess he got bored eventually. 3 days after my 5th birthday Dad came up to my room for the first time. He had never done that before. Mom had stopped him. He broke my nose that first night. We went to the hospital and I told the doctor I fell down the stairs. He seemed to believe me. I lived for 2 years fearing that one night Dad would hit me too hard and I'd end up with the angels. Death scared me. One Wednesday, I was sitting in the corner when I saw him. A tall man in my corner. At first, I thought it was a woman. It looked like a black dress fell from a black face. I realized after a moment that it was a robe. A cloak, but I learned that word years later. I knew what I was looking at. I'd watched TV. I'd read books. I knew what death was supposed to look like. That night I fell asleep on the floor, huddled in the corner of the room with a halo of moonlight coming from the window resting around my feet. Death simply stood in the darkest corner of my room, behind the door leading to the hall. "Why are you here?" I asked him one night. He stared at me from the toy box, knees pressed against his chest and arms curled around his shins, almost a fetal position, though there was no fear in the position, just boredom. "T.O. watch," he told me. I swallowed at those first words. I had expected a quiet rasp, like on TV. Death's voice was something more. It was a burly man's confident and strong. It was a caring mother's nurturing tone. A madman laugh and a child's giggle. It disturbed and comforted me. "To watch what?" I asked. He simply looked at me. I saw his eyes for the first time that night. I had always expected soulless pit there. Instead, I found blue orbs in a bleached skull. Those orbs held galaxies, eternal and non-existent. Everything and nothing lived in the shadows of his cloak. Those contradictions comforted me. "Over you, child," Death responded. I had, though he lied to me, and I grew upset. I asked him why he never stopped my father. I lived a happy life after that. I never forgot what happened to me in my youth though. I followed in my father's footsteps and became a physician. Sadly, jobs were tight and I took a role in the morgue. All those years around death helped me work with my new job and I enjoyed it. My heart broke when my mother was in an accident. I was the one who put the tag on her toe. I had to take the rest of the week off. But death was there that day. He stood in the corner of the storage room when I closed the drawer. Holding his skeletal hand was a little girl with green eyes and chocolate hair. I had seen my mother's family pictures and knew this was her, around 7 years old. It hurt me, but death nodded to me and I knew that he would take care of her. In my lifetime, I've closed the drawer on 4 parents. Dad drove into a storefront while driving drunk. I had to leave the room when they wheeled him in. I would have spat on his cold husk of a body if I didn't. Mom drank herself into an early grave a year later. I pitied her when I closed the drawer. He had broken her soul and she died in pain. Though my mother left that morgue the same way my mother did, I still remember the screams when death dragged my father through the floor, a red-hot chain and metal collar strapped around his neck. My father, the man that saved my life, died 4 years ago. He went quietly in his sleep. I volunteered to close the drawer on him. When I did, death arrived and took a little boy with dark hair and blue eyes. You may wonder why I'm writing this. In truth, I'm not quite sure myself. I guess I want to tell people not to fear death. He's a gentle being with a crappy job. And he saved my life. Now he's standing in the corner, patient as the day I met him. When I'm done this post, I'm going to turn off my laptop, put the little girl he brought with him into my lap and close my eyes. My wife will close her brilliant blue eyes and rest her crimson locks on my chin. I'll take one breath and fall asleep. When I wake up, I'll be with my family. I'll see my mother and father again. I'll see my mom, happier than she was in life. I'll see the 4 dogs I've had in my lifetime too, hopefully. Mortimer, death calls from the corner. I sigh and type faster. If I can say one last thing, I'd like to quote Blue Oyster Cult. Don't fear the Reaper, because after all, people are the real monsters.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
A demon saved my life. I wish he hadn't, by Life Estrange Matu. It was coming down in freezing bucketfuls, and I was trying to ignore the fact that I was floating in my own shoes. Suddenly, the rain above me stopped, and I looked up to see him, the demon, shielding me with his umbrella. "No," I said. "Heard what?" "The bus isn't coming today," he said. "The driver was drunk and got into a crash. Everybody on board was killed." "Oh," I replied. "I guess I'll have to walk it." He extended the umbrella out toward me, and without thinking, I accepted it. My fingers briefly brushed the skin of his hand, and a shiver shot through my entire body. The next day I saw the bus crash on the news, except it had happened after my stop. Just as the man had said, everyone on board had died. And if it weren't for him, I would have been on board too. The next time I saw the demon was during my sophomore year of college. He was waiting for me in my dorm room, hunched over my desk and reading one of my books. "It's you," I said. He calmly shut the book and turned to face me, beaming his crooked-toothed grin. "I brought you a present," he said. He reached a hand inside the lapel of his jacket and retrieved a pink spiral notebook. The name Ellen Hartwell was printed on the cover. "This belongs to the pretty brunette in your psychology class," he said. "The one you're always staring at. You will tell her you found it, and then ask her out to dinner." He set it down on my desk. "No thanks necessary," said the man. "I'll see you again." "Hello again, friend," he said. "The strands of fate are long," he said. "Much longer than a single human life." He snapped his fingers, and disappeared in a mist of blue-gray smoke. They came with bloodhounds and shovels, and they turned my entire property inside out. 10.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
Have you recently received a black envelope in the mail, by Grand Theft Motto? I've worked for the United States Postal Service for most of my adult life. My career started 40 years ago in the sorting room, and it will end today after I post this message. They're suppressing any leaks. They might even find a way to sweep this under the rug. But I have to put it out there. If I don't, I'll never get another night's sleep. I was hoping we wouldn't see any of those this year, Diana told me, nodding for me to sit down. I still had the black envelope in my hand. The recipient's address was printed in clean, white lettering on the front. There was no return address. Sort it. But there's no return address. I did as I was told but couldn't get the envelope out of my mind. I remember it feeling slightly damp when I sorted it into outgoing. Like it was oily, even greasy. Months passed and I managed to finally stop wincing every time a new load of mail came in for sorting. Then, a little more than a year after finding my first black envelope, I found another. Then another. Within the space of 6 months, I'd sorted a dozen of the things, always lacking return addresses, always feeling off to the touch. I began having nightmares, vivid but smeared panic dreams full of heat and shadow and violence. The next year, I was transferred from sorting to deliveries. I suspect Diana just wanted me gone from the tiny, smoke-filled, remember this was 40 years ago, room that passed for her kingdom. I was bad luck. That was fine by me. I laced up my boots, got a comfortable hat, and started making my rounds. My first assignment was to a quiet neighborhood on Maryland's shore. You've likely seen similar places, gravel driveways, oak trees with tire swings, above-ground swimming pools. I loved it and always carried candy for the kids that would rush out some mornings hoping for a package or present or special letter. I brought milk bones for the dogs, too, who were generally much friendlier than I'd been led to expect. In 4 years walking that beat, I was only chased by a canine once, and when the retriever caught me, it turned out that she just wanted to play. Betty shrugged and lifted the small, square card up for my inspection. It's almost like an invitation, but it doesn't say what for. Gold letters. White stock. Betty's name and a date a little more than 2 weeks in the future. That was all. I shrugged and tried to smile. It's probably for a wedding, a funeral, or a birthday party. We said our goodbyes and I finished my route. I tried to put the envelope out of my mind, but the morning of the day in the letter, I couldn't help but feel anxious. When Betty didn't meet me at the mailbox for our usual chat, the anxiety began to climb towards a panic. I decided to bring her letters right to her door in case she was sick or occupied. I've never been religious, but after that day I started going to church. I always repeated the same prayer before leaving. Years ticked by and I moved from deliveries to an office to administration. I was hoping for a quiet retirement this year. Then, a few months ago, the manager of my sorting room came to my office badly shaken. Black envelopes. Dozens. Hundreds. More than he'd ever seen. Not all of his staff had caught on that there was something gruesome about the deliveries, but rumors were spreading. Word came from up high to slow down circulation, to act like everything was normal, basically to put our heads in the sand. Another unofficial policy drifted down to management: lose the envelopes, trash them, destroy them.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
That's how I felt about Tammy. We never should have gotten together in the first place, but it was her birthday and I didn't know what I was getting myself in for. She invited all 5 of us from the office and I was expecting to just have a drink and go home. Fast forward to the bar, half an hour passed when we were all supposed to meet, and every time her phone buzzed I knew it was another person canceling at the last minute. But she was glowing with warmth that wasn't dampened by her disappointment, and I had nowhere else to be, and hours can melt together so fast when you found someone to be lonely with. Tammy stayed close to me as we were leaving together. Close enough to feel her breath on my neck. Then her arms were wrapped around my arm and her warmth wasn't just something to be imagined anymore. Just to keep her balance, she said, but no amount of steadying herself was enough for her to let go. She'd been drinking after all, and needed someone to drive her home. Well, I think she really was beautiful that night, and the more of her she trusted me to see, the more beautiful she became. But love? It wasn't her fault that she came to love me, and it wasn't my fault that I couldn't feel the same. Then there was my other wife. The one with the shaved head. The one with the nose rings, and the leather jacket, and the tattoo of snake twisting from one thigh to the next. I don't know if you could call Zara beautiful, certainly not in the same way you could Tammy, but you could call her other names and they'd all turn her on. I met Zara in another town where my company headquarters was. I had to go once a month, every month, but it didn't take long before I found an excuse to go every weekend instead. Tammy was pregnant, and I wasn't proud about what I was doing. But neither was I ashamed, because any guilt I should have felt was a drop in the ocean that was love. The police were home before I was. The weeping young mother and the screaming punk, it wasn't hard for them to figure out what happened. The knife-slashed curtains and the shattered plates, there must have been quite a fight to be loud enough for the neighbors to call the cops. The blood-stained carpet and the dirty tracks into the nursery, there was no way to hide the evidence, or mistake what happened to my daughter who was slashed into ribbons before she'd ever learned her name. That was almost 20 years ago, and Tammy and I have moved past it the best we could. We had 2 more children, both boys. I'm glad of that, because if we'd had a girl I don't think I could have looked at her without thinking about the child who had been cut. If Tammy can still love me after all that, then who am I to say that I can't love her in return? Despite everything I'd done to avoid being alone though, I know that it's only a matter of time. Tammy is sick, and she isn't going to get better. I've been spending every day at my wife's side, and our youngest will be leaving to college in a few weeks. Then it's just going to be me and my regrets, thinking about the words Tammy said to me last night.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I first saw it in the bathroom. I was brushing my teeth when my wife Erin came in to pee. I was bent over the faucet, scooping some water into my mouth to rinse out. Ryan was our 4-year-old son. His preschool was having a little event where the kids get dressed up and serve tea to their parents. Sorry about that, I said, feeling dizzy. Just remembered that I have a report due at work by the end of the day. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked gasp. How about you, honey? You feeling okay? Erin smiled. I am, she said. Kind of annoying the alarm didn't go off this morning, but honestly I needed the extra sleep. Got about, 4.5 years worth of sleep debt to work off. At work, it was hot. By the time I'd ridden the elevator to my floor, I was soaked in sweat. But that's partly because the elevator didn't go straight to my floor. Although I was the only one in it, and I definitely pushed the 5 button, the elevator took me to the 7th floor. I didn't even notice until it was too late. I stepped off the elevator, the doors closed behind me, and I walked to the right like I always did. It doesn't matter how it happened. Just get it fixed. We're all trying to fix it. Even if not all of us screwed it up. I shrugged. Elevator's broken, I said. I'm just looking for the stairs. Can you guys point the way? I've never been on this floor before. The goddamn elevator's broken now, shouted the shorter one. Then, from behind me, I heard a ding. Oh, sounds like it's here after all, I said, backing out of the doorway. The men had a nervous and somehow dangerous energy that I was eager to get away from. I got in the elevator, pushed the 5 button 5 times, and finally arrived at the proper floor. I went over to the secretary's desk, wiping my forehead. Denise was there, and looked up when she saw me. Good morning, Ryan, she said. Ryan was my son's name. My name was Roland. I didn't correct her, figuring that the heat was making her loopy like it was starting to make me feel loopy. Denise gave me a confused look. Problem, she said. I wasn't made aware of any problem. And there was a strange smell. Like when you take your car to a mechanic. The smell of motor oil and welding torches and grease. I grabbed some files and headed out of the building. I skipped the elevator, and took the stairs, even though I felt on the verge of a heat stroke. When I made it outside, it was even hotter. And that terrible smell was still there. Maybe I am having a stroke, I thought. That's what had finally taken my father, a stroke that bled out into the brain, after 5 smaller ones over the course of 5 years. I knew what to look for, and when I got in the car, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. I drove home carefully, trying to blast the car's AC, and only getting hot air. Just to take my mind off the possibility that I was going nuts, I turned on the radio. I have to be honest, said a woman over the car speakers. We don't have a firm grasp on this, as it currently stands. Reports are coming in from all over the place. As yet, there's no reason to panic, but there is plenty of reason to pull some bodies off their code 5 positions, and go directly into a code 10 situation. There's too many leaks in the dam, and we have to act now. If you can hear this, you may be wondering what is going on. First, let us assure you that there is absolutely nothing to worry about. This is simply a case of a few bad lines of code, and will be resolved quickly. Any aberrations that you witness, say by peering into a reflective surface, are of absolutely no consequence. We assure you. Now for the important part. No matter what you hear from any derelicts that you may encounter, you must remember that the system is your friend. Without the system, you would find yourself in a very scary place. We can promise you, you don't want to know what life is like without the system protecting you. In the coming days, you may experience terrifying glimpses of what that looks like, and you must always remember, the system is on your side. We are looking out for you, and want to see you thrive. If you hear anybody try to tell you differently, you must report them immediately. Simply declare for a code / censored / situation in a calm, clear voice. We will hear you, and resolve the problem at once. I pulled myself together and drove to Ryan's tea ceremony. Nothing unusual happened on the way to Ryan's school, or during the ceremony itself. The ceremony ended, and I stood up to give Ryan a hug goodbye, and to thank him for the tea. As I was doing so, I happened to look into the pond. I should have seen birch trees and clouds reflected on the surface, but I didn't. I saw harsh fluorescent lights hanging from an industrial ceiling. I felt an incredible pain and saw shocks of color swirling around in front of my eyes. The thing would not let go. I pulled harder, and the pain increased, until I felt on the verge of passing out. Finally, I felt a sharp relief as the thing pulled free and I held it in my hand. I looked at it. I hurled the creature away from me, into the pond. But now I saw that it wasn't a pond at all. It was a hole, in the middle of a concrete floor, that seemed to drop down into endless darkness. I forced myself to stay calm and looked slowly around. We were in an enormous room, full of people milling aimlessly and slowly around, like zombies. Each of them was wearing a gray tunic, and each had a creature stuck to their heads. Dispersed among these people were men and women in white lab coats, as I had seen on the 7th floor of my office building. This latter group of people did not have the monstrous creatures on the sides of their heads. They were observing the first group, and jotting notes down on clipboards. Finally, there was a third, smaller group of people. Or I guessed that they were people. They were dressed in full military gear, from helmet to boots, and were heavily armed. They were patrolling the area. I noticed that the tunics we were wearing had hoods, and some people had them up. I quickly put mine up, to make it less likely that somebody would notice that I no longer had a monster on my head. "Okay guys," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's all go home together, okay? I'm gonna take the rest of the day off, and we'll go get some ice cream or something. Sound good?" "That sounds wonderful," said Erin, also in a flat tone, and through one side of her mouth. The other side wouldn't open. I felt like crying, but I knew that, above everything, I had to act like nothing was wrong. I saw 2 doors, and made a quick calculation. I picked the one that was further away, but was less likely to bring us near a lab coat or a military guard. I led Erin and Ryan by their hands. We were halfway to our door when the other one burst open. 2 of the military guards came in dragging a woman in a gray tunic between them. The woman's face was bloodied, and I saw that she didn't have a creature on the side of her head. She started screaming. "You people have to wake up. The system is not your friend. They are enslaving you, and feeding off you. Find a mirror. Find the gorlock on your head, pull it off, and crush it into green slime. You have to." One of the guards smashed the woman's head with the butt of an assault rifle, and she stopped screaming. I kept walking, slowly, with my family, occasionally stealing a glance behind me. The guards dragged the woman to the center of the room, where the endless hole was. They picked her up and dropped her body into it. We made it to the door. I took one last look around, and tried it. It opened, and I quickly pushed my family through and then followed behind. We were in a long dark hallway. There were 5 or 6 closed doors. We kept walking, and turned the corner. We came to a set of stairs going down, and then to another hallway. We walked for what seemed like hours, seemingly getting deeper and deeper into the building. Many of the doors that we passed had windows in them that I looked through. On the other side were giant rooms identical to the one we had been held in, with a mass of people in gray tunics, the lab coats, and the military guards. Finally, I had to rest. I found what appeared to be a small closet, shoved my family in, and locked the door. That is where we are now. I have removed the creature from Aaron, and crushed it into green slime, as instructed by the poor woman who was thrown into the hole. Aaron and I have agreed to leave the creature on Ryan's head for the time being, for 2 reasons. The system is not your friend. I don't know what exactly it is, or how or why it exists, or if all of humanity is in its grips. But please, if you can read this, know that there are a lot of people trapped in the system. You may be one of them, and not even know it. You must find a way to destroy the system. Please. /. Next, do not trust the system. Final, a message from the system.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
This is the teacher's lounge, Lily. That's Nurse Whitmore. At least I think it is. It sounds like her. She's been the school nurse for 2 years. Before her we had Nurse Faye, who never believed anyone was sick. She'd just take our temperature and then tell us we were fine and send us back to class. One girl, Janie, went to see her because she felt nauseated. Nurse Faye sent her back to class and she ended up turning into a human fountain in the middle of social studies. It was gross. Nurse Whitmore seems taken aback by the question. I beg your pardon, she says, how many are dead? Nobody's dead, Lily, you just had a fainting spell. It can happen. There wasn't a gas leak or anything. But I heard coughing. I remember just before everything seemed to go black like the smoke was covering my eyes completely, there was someone coughing in the crowd. Nurse Whitmore touches her cheek kind of in the same way my mom touches her chin, like they're pressing enter on some search engine in their brains. Coughing, that was probably Drew Sanders. He's got asthma, sweetie, that's all. He's in my office right now. That's why we had to bring you to the teacher's lounge. I don't know Drew Sanders. I hope he doesn't die because of all this. Is he going to be okay? Oh, he'll be fine. He just needed his nebulizer. That sounds like space-age technology. What happened to the lady in black? Nurse Whitmore looks puzzled. Who? She shakes her head. Your father is on his way. Pachar, I need to know where Meredith lives. You mustn't go to Meredith's house, he tells me. That creepy man I met at the hospital is after her. I remind him. We talked about all this just the other night, Pachar, you know she's in danger. If you go to Meredith's house, things will be much worse. Will I die? There are too many outside elements at work here. The inclusion of Nathaniel and Duma and Raziel are setting things out of alignment. Pachar says, pretty much. I'm scared. I don't want to die. I was reading a really good book and I haven't finished it. Also, I kind of want a dog at some point. Preferably a big one that doesn't die easily, in case I run into Officer Flowers again. What's up with her anyway? Why was she visiting my school? Was she looking for me? Maybe she was looking for Meredith. Maybe Officer Flowers is working with Felix and they're hunting for Meredith together. I need to find Meredith. Where does Meredith live? I insist. Pachar gives in and tells me her address, but insists that I not go there. I say it to myself several times. If you say something a bunch, it's easier to remember. Especially if you didn't write it down anywhere. I guess I could write it down, but I see Nurse Whitmore come out of the school and start talking to my dad in the car. She sees me over here by the swings, and waves for me to come over while my dad fills out some sign-out sheet for me. Lily, wait, Pachar says. I'm not listening though, because I'm trying to buckle up but my vision is beginning to act wonky. I think I'm starting to see something before it happens again. I try to focus so I can tell what it is. It's looking through the front windshield of the car as we drive down a road I'm not familiar with. Well, that's useful. Alright, Lily, says Nurse Whitmore, you be well. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow. Thank you, I hear my dad say. He sounds weird, like he's coming down with a head cold. In my vision, we pull up alongside a small, green house. I'm looking at the mailbox, and it has the number 86 on it. It's the same number as Meredith's address. We must be going to her house. That must mean I convince my dad to go there so I can warn Meredith. Good. I know Pachar doesn't want me to go, but maybe my dad can help. Like a weasel's eyes. I get goosebumps all over my arms and legs. Why is Felix Weasel Face in my dad's car? Where's my dad? I yell. Felix looks back and grins. No, don't look back, that's how people get T-boned by giant trucks. Keep looking forward, you crazy weasel man. I wave at him to keep his eyes on the road, but I don't think he understands the universal signal for, face forward, dummy. Pachar has gone quiet in the front seat. I think I know why. I think it's the same reason Raziel, the angel in Felix's locket, won't speak. Anything they tell me, Felix will know. Just like he must already know Meredith's address thanks to Pachar telling it to me. They will not speak to me with Felix near, because I'm like a radio antenna that Felix can pick up their signals from. A really fleshy antenna. With hair. And a face. That's pissed off and glare staring at him from the back seat. Felix's mouth twitches, and he looks back at me with a bit of anger in the rearview mirror. It's almost impressive how much beadier his eyes get when he's angry. They're super beady. How can he even see anything with eyes that small? She set fire to the stage we were on, Lily. She couldn't have done that without being angry, and only because she was near you. No, I don't know if it's fair to call Lisa Welch a girl. I want to call her other things. Swear jar things. I want to go to the bank and get one of those big rolls of quarters and pop it open and pour it into the swear jar and then talk about Lisa Welch until all the vegetables in the house turn brown from the rotten words I use. You're a terrible liar, Lily. We turn onto Rosemont Drive. That's the street Pachar told me is where Meredith lives. We're going to be there in a matter of minutes. I can't convince Felix not to hurt her, and I don't think I can stop him once we're there. I've got to do something drastic. Dad, I'm really sorry. Mr. Felix, I say, looking him dead in his beady, weasel eyes. He looks back at me. Yes. You're going to crash. Well, my dad's going to be pissed. This is the second car in 3 months that got wrecked. I can see from the back seat that the front of the car is all crumpled up like it's trying to hug the tree. I hope we didn't hurt the tree too much. Sorry, tree. Get me out. I screamed to the lady outside. I try to unbuckle myself, but the seat shifted and I can't find where it's buckled in. Help. This isn't my dad. One of the front doors creaks like someone's trying to crush a soda can. I look over and Felix is no longer in the front seat. The lady on her phone is telling whoever's on the other end about a car crashing into a tree on Rosemont. I can hear her describing me as a frantic, little girl. Lady, I'm only frantic because there's a crazy guy loose and I don't know if he's armed or willing to kill me and you. Do you really want to die right after jogging? Nobody wants to die all sweaty and exhausted like that. I don't have time for this. I think Felix is still going to Meredith's. I can't sit here and wait, I've got to do something. Pachar tells me to stay put. Don't go to Meredith's, he says. I can't listen to you this time, Pachar. Even if it means I die saving Meredith, I need to try. Pachar won't stop telling me not to go. Stay put, wait for the police. Trust me on this, Lily, you have to trust me. I trust you, Pachar, but I need to do this. That wasn't my dad, I tell her, I'm okay. Please, tell the police to head to 86 Rosemont. The bad man who kidnapped me is going there.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
Well, about a week ago my roommate left for vacation and I started noticing those sorts of feelings at various points of the day. I started to see figures for brief moments when I'd turn my head, sometimes blue, sometimes white, sometimes black. I also would see them pass by from the corner of my eye, usually thinking they were my boyfriend walking past. I was keeping my feelings to myself because my boyfriend tends to be pretty logical, and I didn't want to sound silly or paranoid, especially because I wasn't really scared or anything. But eventually I started to get a bit spooked at times, so I asked him if he felt like he was being watched or anything, and he admitted he felt the same way but didn't want to worry me. Well, last night I fell asleep on the couch without my boyfriend. I woke up at about 5 a.m. to the sun rising because my cat was climbing over me to get on her window hammock bed and it fell down. I didn't think much of it. I sat up, folded my blanket, checked my phone and started to recall my dreams of the night. Then I heard 3 loud semi-fast knocks from what seemed to be the front door. I was like, WTF BC, the cat seemed skittish like they heard it too. So I woke my boyfriend up and told him what happened. He said he thought he heard it too but wasn't sure because he wasn't very awake, and while I was talking to him I told him my right calf was burning a bit, so I looked at it and there were stretch mark looking red lines on it. I took a photo with flash to get a better look. The marks went away within 10 or 15 minutes. I know this sounds dumb but I swear I counted 13 marks this morning. Any advice? Insight? I'm not scared, I just don't want to mess around with anything, and I'm also wondering if maybe the knocks were an omen perhaps. Whatever is going on, I take it seriously.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
My name is Lily Madwip and I'm having a picnic. That's my brother Roger. He's 6 years older than me. We both like potato chips. Who doesn't? Even my pet turtle Raphael likes them. Raphael is sitting on the tablecloth next to me. He's so cute. I give him a potato chip and pass the bag to Roger. Raphael chomps on the potato chip. My mom and dad smile at both of us, because they're so happy we're their kids. Roger plays in a band with his friends Skeeter and Dustin. Roger plays the drums. He's very good at it. My dad taught him how. Someday I hope he'll teach me too. And we love you too, Lily. My mom pets my head. I like it when she pets my head. Back in 3rd grade, this lady used to come by our classroom and we were always told to get out our pencils when she came by. We'd set our pencils out on our desks and the lady would come to each of us and use our pencil to comb through our hair. I always loved it when the lady would comb through my hair with my pencil. I told my mom about the nice lady who would visit our classroom and gently comb our hair, and she told me it was the school nurse and she was checking for lice. Hey, that's mine. Susie calls from down in the lake. She waves at us, but she's got no hand. We all laugh and wave back. Dad stands up and brushes himself off. He's wearing a nice black suit and tie. It must be pretty hot for this sunny summer day. Roger, he says, let's play some music for the ladies. Sounds good. Roger says. He hops to his feet. His belly sloshes because everything inside is mashed potatoes. There's a drum set out on the grass under a big willow tree, and Roger sits down and pulls out his drum sticks. He pours out the snare drum and gives it a tap. Mom and I turn to see a dapper-looking man in a white shirt with a painted-on tie. He's got on black pants and a black vest. He looks very happy, and he bows to us both. He winks at me. It's time to wake up, Lily. No, 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 no. Dad and Roger start playing a song, but it doesn't sound like music. Dad blows into the harmonica and it makes a sound like a siren. Roger strikes the drums and it sounds like crashing and things breaking. It's not a very good song, but it sounds typical for what Roger used to play when Skeeter and Dutton were over. Black smoke is coming off the grill and forming dark clouds in the sky. I can smell the hot dogs and hamburgers burning, and it's upsetting because I really wanted a hamburger, but not if they're burned. She turns and looks at me and her face is all waxy looking and melting. I can still see her mouth and her teeth, but her eyes and her nose are sliding right off her face. It's too late, Lily, she says, everything's burned. But I'm not dead. I tell him. It's really hot in here. I glance around and realize the room is on fire. That's not good. How long was I out for? The picnic didn't seem, well, okay, the picnic seemed to last about an hour. The wallpaper has flames coming out of it and even the bed is burning. Nobody's going to be sleeping on that now. There's a crash from somewhere close by, and then the sound of someone struggling. Meredith? I say. Oh my God, I can speak. Lily, I burned her. I burned her right up. I didn't mean to do it. I sit up. Meredith is curled up in a corner, hiding her face. She's sobbing and holding herself and rocking back and forth. Between us there's a person, curled up as well, only they're kind of on fire and not moving. Oh, Jesus. I can't tell who they are because they're all black and like I said on fire, but it must be poor Officer Flowers. She smells like burnt hamburgers. We gotta get out of here, Meredith, I choke on the smoke. I'm in a lot of pain. And your house is on fire. Are those glow-in-the-dark stickers on your ceiling? Somebody moves in the doorway to the hall. I turn to look. It's Roger. He's wearing his sleeveless shirt and his hair is combed like at his funeral. Just leave her, ass face, he says. He walks off down the hall. Oh great, I'm hallucinating. She takes her melted Barbie and hugs him to her chest. Outside, I can hear fire engine sirens. I wait, looking at her. Come on Meredith, snap out of it. She looks back at me, tears in both her eyes. I still wonder if she can see me with that milky one. I grab Meredith by the shoulders. Meredith, I'm not afraid of sharks. Felix made me say it. Don't you get it? He told me to tell you what I'm scared of, and I said I was scared of sharks. Even in my head, I was thinking suddenly about how scary sharks are. But sharks are out in the ocean. I'm not scared of them. Or clowns. Well, okay, I'm unnerved by clowns. But I wasn't scared of them until Felix made me confess. Okay then. Meredith, I say to her while the ambulance bumps along, I don't think you're ugly and you don't scare me. She looks at me doubtfully. You're one of my best friends. One of them, she asks. Like, third best. Look, the point is, you don't scare me. And I don't think you're ugly. I think the weasel burned your parents. She leans in close so the EMT can't hear her. It didn't make me happy when my parents died. I know I said I liked it, but I didn't. That wasn't me. I wish they were still alive. That would mean he did it, right? Do you think Felix killed my parents? It's okay, even you, my best friend, can make a mistake from time to time. My mom eventually comes into the room, red-faced. She's been crying and at the sight of me lying there waiting, all bandaged up, she breaks into crying again. She doesn't normally cry all that much, but maybe the whole thing with losing Roger in a car crash and then having to go to the hospital because I was in another one, it's probably all been too much for her. We hug and I pet her head. I know you did, sweetie, she says, kissing me on the forehead. Is Daddy okay? I start to cry with her, and hug her, even though it hurts to be hugged. He's in intensive care. He suffered a lot of internal injuries, but he should be okay. Can we go see him? Sure. We can go back there and wait together, okay? She takes my hand and we head down to the ICU. I get this churning feeling in my gut as we walk past nurses' stations and doctors' offices. Maybe it's the pain medication they gave me earlier for my ribs. As we walk, I look down at the shiny tiles. I wonder how much mopping has to get done to make this place always look so clean. Except there, where there's a spot of blood. And there. In fact, actually there's a lot of blood splatters. It's becoming hard not to step in them. I'm surprised that Mom is just walking through it all carefree in her expensive shoes. Normally if she gets even a scuff mark on them, she goes ballistic. I guess there's more important things than shoes at the moment. I mean, I know there is, but Mom doesn't always think so. I close my eyes, and when I open them again, the blood is gone. The floor is clean and clear again. Moments later, we stop in front of a dimly lit room with a shaded window looking in. My dad is lying in a hospital bed with dozens of machines hooked up to him and I can just make out someone standing next to him, leaning over, probably checking one of the many tubes or wires connected to him. My dad's face reminds me of Felix's, not in the weasel sense, but when I last saw Felix and his face was all bruised and there was blood running down from his hair. I'm seeing so much blood today. I hope Felix is off somewhere bleeding right now. Can we ask the doctor how he's doing? I ask Mom.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
if you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon. And leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same dat crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.